make my blood run cold. All about midnight, baby, that's when I get my thrill.
Good morning and welcome to the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting held today on November 18th, 2021. My name is Joseph Citro and I will be chairing this meeting. Excuse me, Councilman Miranda.
It's my pleasure today to have the privilege of introducing our chaplain today, who's going to say the morning prayer. We have the privilege of introducing Tampa Police Department Chaplain Dahlia Coleman today. She has been a chaplain for over 15 years. She moved here from Detroit, Michigan over 25 years ago and has been an ordained minister since the year 2000. Chaplain Coleman is semi-retired from private duty caregiving. She currently has a domestic violence ministry. Her mission is to see everyone free from domestic violence and to be able to take pride in what they do and to have a safe home and a safe relationship. Along with that, she doesn't stop there. She is, if you're thinking about getting married, and I know, Mr. Chairman, it hasn't crossed your mind yet, but if it does, Chaplain Coleman does premarital counseling, like for me, and also performs wedding ceremonies. And when she's not busy with all those things, she has enough time to go out and make t-shirts and custom jewelry, and she loves living the best of her life. It's my pleasure to introduce today Chaplain Coleman.
If everybody could please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chaplain.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come this morning, looking to the hills which cometh our help, and our help does come from you. We come with humbleness and gratefulness this morning, thanking you for waking us up this morning, because, Lord, we know that with you we can do all things, but without you we can do nothing. And as the City Council start their meeting today, we ask you, Lord, to touch each and every one of them, that the decisions they make will be decisions that you have designed and the plan that you have for our city. Father, let there be peace in the meeting, let there be no contention, let them be on one accord, that you will be exemplified, you will be glorified in everything that is said, everything that is done. And this morning we also come praying for the hurt, the lonely this morning, the people that are in pain this morning, the ones that have lost loved ones. It's coming a time of the year where we have a lot of loved ones that have gone on, but we pray for comfort today. And we pray for peace in our nation and in our city, that our city will be a city of unity and love. And we pray, Lord, that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.
Let me,
Roll call, please.
Miranda. Goods.
Here.
Dingfelder. Maniscalco. Here. Vieira. Here. Carlson.
Here.
And Cedro.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda is downstairs. He will be joining us in a second. Mr. Massey.
Good morning, CRA Board. This meeting of the City of Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency is being conducted with a live in-person quorum of the CRA President and City Council chambers. However, in light of the continuing COVID-19 government-issued health standards or guidance in effect, members of the public are also encouraged and allowed to participate virtually through video or audio teleconferencing, referred to by Florida statutes and rules as Communications Media Technology, or CMT. The public and citizens of the city will be able to watch, listen, and view this meeting on cable TV, Spectrum Channel 640 and Frontier Channel 15, and also via the internet, tampa.gov/livestream. Members of the public are also encouraged to participate in this public meeting by using a number of means, including sending written comments by internet or web, written comments by email, written comments by U.S. mail. Members of the public may also speak remotely using their CMT device at home or at their office, or they may participate by using the CMT made available here at Old City Hall on the second floor. All written comments for CA matters that were distributed or received within 24 hours have been distributed to the CRA board. Those are the generally the rules of procedure for the public comment, 3 minutes at the start of the meeting. I would ask, before we move into public comment, will you waive your rules and agree to follow the procedures I just outlined. So, thank you.
We have a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Do we need a roll call for that, Mr. Massey?
Yes, please.
Roll call, please.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Miranda, Viera, Citro,
Yes.
Maniscalco, and Dingfelder. Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent.
Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me, are you finished, Mr. Massey?
I did have one item that I wanted to clarify on the agenda that we needed to correct from last meeting. There was a motion made by CRA member Goods, seconded by CRA member Miranda, regarding requesting a report from the Clean Team and the Neighborhood Enhancement Team regarding trash issues in East Tampa, especially on East Lake Avenue. That motion was made, but there was never a vote confirming the motion. We do have folks ready to provide that information to you all under the Director's Report, item number 4. But if you could restate your motion and have that vote, so we just clarify for the record, for the clerk's records.
Yes, sir. Restate the motion that the Code Enforcement Clean Team come before council to speak on the issues of East Tampa.
Okay, there is a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote, please.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Miranda, Viera, Maniscalco, Dingfelder, and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with
That's
Dingfelder
it.
being absent.
You have something you want to bring forward?
Mr. Chair, Councilman Board Member Dingfelder's aide office did notify us that he would be late, but he will be here.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Viera.
Thank you, sir. I have at 12:15 today, I'm speaking to a class from a school that's about 15 minutes away. I said it during lunch. I think we should be done by then, just FYI.
One way or the other, whether it be finished or lunch, we will be out of here by 12:15.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, well, Mr. Vera, you're gonna miss a good Thanksgiving lunch that I provided for us this afternoon, sir.
Councilman Goods,
Thanksgiving.
you are,
Thanksgiving.
that's very kind of you, sir. Thank you,
I
sir.
appreciate Mr. Booth for taking care of us. Appreciate it. Mr. Vieira, sorry, you gotta go give the speech.
You know, I'm telling you, there was something magical in the air last night at the tree lighting, and I think it put Councilman Goods in the holiday spirit.
We're ready for public comment at this juncture.
Yes. Public comment, please. Is there anyone downstairs for public comment?
Yes, sir. There you go. Right here. Just place it right here. There's your sheet.
Okay,
So, yeah, just, is that what you want them to say?
yes. Can I see that?
Okay.
Is that good? Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank you all for the opportunity to participate in the public comments. My name is Keela McCaskill, the president of the Center for Economic Development, and I have a nonprofit that offers assistance with seniors and disabled persons in Tampa. And this morning I'm talking about particularly the East Tampa area. And so I'm here to share the good news. The East Tampa CAC agreed or wanted to partner or collaborate with the center so that we will offer the services, as I mentioned, to the disabled disabled and senior homeowners in East Tampa. We offer light tree trimming, we offer lawn maintenance, we offer debris removal. We also offer pressure wash, we'll do installation of sod and or flowers where it's applicable. So that's great news. Together, we'll be able to increase the CAC membership and participation, hopefully attracting the right volunteers and or professionals to help us transform this community. Unfortunately, there are some opportunities that's available in East Tampa's, i.e. the owner-occupied rehabilitation program when it becomes available, but until then we get to participate with starting with the low-hanging fruit of offering these services. But this type of initiative is like the epitome of grassroots marketing. They get to see community service in action. So this is a wonderful opportunity to participate. The community also can learn more about the Public Safety Committee. We have one. They can learn more about that. You know, there's a committee that's concerned about their safety in East Tampa. They'll learn more about the availability of down payment assistance and that there is an economic development plan for their community. Together, we'll help mitigate gentrification because each one of the participants receives evaluations for their home. They get information, any kind of educational resource that might be available for them and their heirs or their children or whomever will inherit their home should they no longer be here. But we give them this information to help them understand the value of their home and their community. And this is how we help mitigate gentrification. So this morning, I'm asking for your support when this comes before you for your review. It's a great opportunity, and I hope that you will see it the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No more speakers at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any registered speakers?
Yes, good morning, sir. I have Mr. Michael Randolph on the line. Mr. Randolph, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning. Hope everybody's well. Hope everybody's getting ready for Thanksgiving. My name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the West Tampa CDC. I'm here today to talk about updates on the Rome Yard project. As you know, there was a big meeting a couple of days ago. So I want to start by giving a shout out to the team. The two lead groups is the Related Group and Tampa Housing Authority. The other groups that's related to the workforce and wealth building strategies, the CDC of Tampa, and our other partner that's doing construction work. We have been building to identify. I'm so excited. We have a building now that has been identified as part of the project where we're going to house the workforce and the wealth building center. Just a couple highlights, because the video that was shown of the West Tampa CDC had malfunctioned. So I want to give a couple highlights to the West Tampa CDC Technology, Wealth Building, and Job Creation Center. Anywhere between 30 to 40 new community resident businesses going to be started within the next 5 years. I want to emphasize community resident businesses. Out of that, we're talking anywhere between 90 and 100 new job creations as a result of that particular initiative. Our tech center, which is going to change the narrative as to the future, is going to focus on teaching residents in West Tampa how to code, how to use software development, how to build game application, mobile application. We're taking it to the next level when it comes to to technology. In addition to that, we're putting together what's known as the first community-friendly tech community, in which residents begin to understand the value of technology and how it can change the narrative in their life. Related to the Production and Performing Arts Center, we're going to be doing video, TV production, a lot of things related to how to reduce public safety. We're happy to announce we got 2 plays from Hollywood that's going to be part of that initiative. One from Miami and the other is from California. Very happy about that initiative. The last initiative is the Wealth Building Initiative. I'm most happy about this. This is where we put together home-based businesses for residents in West Tampa. The focus of this is on e-commerce and social media. What's important about this is focus on supplemental income for senior citizens, working with people with criminal records, low income, and the disabled, in order to give them the skill sets necessary to earn those dollars necessary to stay in the community. We know that the research shows that you have to have 3 jobs to actually get a house in the community.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I went over.
Thank you very much. I've just been informed we have one more public comment speaker on the second floor.
Uhuru, Mentez not. So Uhuru because we as African people should always be thinking about our freedom, and Uhuru means freedom. Hey, I want to give the people some insight on something that's going on here. This is an order from Judge Jared E. Smith. It say both the documents are representative of the type of frivolous, derogatory, irrelevant, and scandalous material the court and other officers of the court faced in the last 2 years. You know what that white man's talking about? You know what that white judge is talking about? The white judge is talking about an African person doing pushback for the nasty things Chief Judge Figueroa and those other nasty white judges are doing over the African people over at the Hillsborough County Clerk of the Circuit Court. Nasty. It's a nasty white system that treat black people nasty, and when you do any pushback, then they want to talk nasty and Ku Klux Klanish just like this. You understand? Black people getting out of prison, serving 20 and 30 and 40 years, and getting out and being told that they have to pay fines and fees and costs and court costs and all this other kind of stupidness. That's the stupidness they want to do to us. No matter where they see black people, they know we have an absence of black power. So what they do, they treat us nasty, they treat us inhumane, they treat us with that superiority complex and the inferiority complex like we're inferior. A nasty judge, Judge Jared Smith, over at the Hillsborough County Clerk of the Circuit Court. Remember his name, Judge Jared E. Smith. Vote for him when that time comes. But like I tell black people, don't vote at all, period. And when we vote, we have to start voting for the things that make sense. We need people, politicians that run for office, that talk about reparations, that talk about better housing, that talk about better schooling for our children. Not these expulsions and suspensions. No. We need to talk about freeing our African men, women, and children from all these prisons. They're political prisoners, but they tell us, no, they're criminals. No, they're political prisoners. Black people in jail and in prison for like $5 worth of marijuana, driving on a suspended license, and all this other nonsense that goes with it. And that's what our politicians need to address. That's what our people need to be addressing. Not the nonsense about who's getting a park, who's going to put a speed bump. Hey, these people owe us $621 trillion in reparations money. 621 years they've been abusing Africa and African people, and nothing of it. And politicians can't even speak of that. Most black politicians, so ignorant, they don't even know what the word reparations mean. They don't have the slightest idea. They don't know what the city of Tampa owes us, what the city of St. Petersburg owes us. This city been formed since 1851 or 1849 and been treating black people bad ever since it's been formed. Used to be known as the lynch capital of the South. Yes, we have to stand up to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going back to the phones, is there any other speakers?
No.
Thank you very much. And let the record reflect that Councilman Dingfelder is also joined us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Van Loan.
Good morning, Chair and CRA board members. And happy November, everyone. And before I forget, at the end of the meeting, when you all get out of here quickly for your meetings, happy Thanksgiving to everyone listening for next week. Our first item on the agenda is Mr. Rashawn Nesbitt. Is he on the line?
Michelle, he is not logged on at this time.
Okay, if you can let us know, we can go on with the other items. Mr. Nesbitt is from the Florida Housing Coalition, and he'd been asked to come talk to the CRA board and give you a general overview of community land trusts. But until he can log on, we will go to item number 2, and we have Ms. Connie Burton. If you remember last month, because of some other activities, we ran out of time for her to come make her presentation as she wraps up her year as CAC chair for East Tampa.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm Connie Burton, and let me just start off by saying what a year. What a year it has been to look, not from the outside, but squarely in the face of an organization, principled people, leadership, that the community is always in expectation that would do right by them. And so what type of roadmap did we have going into as being the chairperson of the East Tampa board? unfortunately, in our community, the passing of the torch is so difficult. And so what I looked at primarily was the mission statement of the CRA. And what it laid out very clearly to me is that we needed to concentrate on slum, blight, poverty, and hopelessness. And so I didn't see the hopelessness in the people, because from the very first day that we moved into that position, if you can recall previous, say past years of CRA meetings, a lot of times we couldn't even get a quorum. But I can guarantee you that henceforth, the meetings have been fully participated and our board being alert. And so things that we asked for was not out of the ordinary. It was not brand new. We looked at what the previous board had asked for in terms of spending money toward the rehabbing of houses. We doubled down on that in that request. And to this day, I can say that there has been no activity. I would want to piggyback on the first public speaker that was here this morning and what they're asking for. Although the concept in itself is brilliant, it's beautiful, but it comes with a cost. And the cost that I believe it brings out is the division that continued to exist in the community. Instead of adopting the rehab proposal that the board has put forth, the work that Mrs. McCaskill is talking about is just doing individual houses for 6 people. And it's at a cost of $10,000. Whereas if you would pass the East Tampa rehab proposal, the exterior that we had proposed, we could move forward in doing so many things for so many people in our community. Because what would make those 6 persons more favored than other seniors in our community? The cry of rehab in East Tampa has been so great that the county has even extended to giving $1.3 million exclusively to East Tampa, along with the City of Tampa rehab proposal. So there's a lot of money there. We just have to find the political will to do it. One thing that we do note that did happen immediately is the $1.2 million that was set aside for Fair Oaks. We hear that there's things going on with that project. Also the $300,000 plus that was laid out for the strategic plan. We await that final report. We looked at the Leadership Academy that was proposed, that we want to give our young people better guidance. I think that's about ready to be approved by you. Summer job program, we want to double down. We want to move away from just our children picking up trash and debris, but connect them to an apprentice type of mentorship program over the summer. So as they do that work, they can also be introduced into the business community. We ask for available lots purchased on 22nd Street. The prior board had bought a building at 3623. For what reason? We don't know. But when we explored some ideas as to how that building, and with the city's staff, maintenance people going in there to look at the bones of the building to say it was in good shape, it couldn't go anywhere because we needed to submit some type of full vision board to Councilman Gould. And so the lots adjacent to that property, I guess Ms. Van Loan, Mr. McCray would give you an update if they was purchased. The tree trimming grant is something that was highly supported in the community. The board that is now under the new chairman has approved of adding more money into the tree trimming grant. And it has almost been like the board under my leadership, I can say it was a feeling of taxation without representation. And so the approval of what we had asked for in our conversation was the hiring of a consultant that would report primarily to the CRA board, but I was outvoted. And so now money's coming directly out of the CRA account will go toward hiring an additional city staff person. Imagine that. The residents already paying into the tax pool, but now we have to hire an additional staff person to concentrate on the needs of East Tampa. So we requested additional down payment assistance. We're finding that the houses in East Tampa, the residents are being outpriced because of wages that many workers earned. It's almost nearly impossible to match up with the cost of houses, some of them going as high as $449,000. We increased our down payment assistance. We asked that a special $500,000 be set aside so we can look at different housing options. And I'm just gonna end it there. Because I believe that if the board, and this is nothing against the staff, I think they did the very best that they could do. But if there's political will to transform East Tampa would have transformed by now. East Tampa sit in the middle of District 5. District 5 has been able, to do tremendous things. I'm seeing that there's gonna be a $100 million project on Henry. The building has been knocked down. On Henry, there's a big marijuana production center down there. So things that people wanna see happen in East Tampa is happening. Unfortunately, the things that the community continue to cry out for, it is moving as if it is deliberately and intentionally not being done. And lastly, I want to say this. Recently, and this might be in Ms. Van Loan report as well, the CDC came and made a request for $190,000. The CDC is a prosperous organization, has been around since 1992, and they didn't come and just ask for a loan. They say they needed money for water and sewer hookup for 4 houses that they're building. Now, this is not a grant or loan that they're asking the board to give them. This is straight out money. And one request that we ask is that if you're building 4 brand new homes in East Tampa, could one of those houses be set aside so we can bring one resident that live in East Tampa presently toward qualification for that house? What could we do to ensure that the residents in East Tampa end up benefiting from some of these tax dollars? And the answer was no, it's not something that they can do on top of the CDC of East Tampa just being recently awarded $20 million from Fifth Third Bank. It's painful to have to come down here to talk about these things. This should have been a simple assignment for me. Let me just rattle off all the wonderful things. But it is still at a crawl. It is still at a crawl. It is still looking at the playbook of the past, trying to figure out how we're going to catch up. And so while Ms. Van Loan and Mr. McCray has been very gracious, I understand the assignment that when it is the political will of leadership of the city of Tampa that includes you and the mayor, East Tampa will become better for the residents of East Tampa as opposed to excluding that population until it is completely 100% gentrified. Thank you.
Ms. Burton, please do not go away.
Yes, sir.
Don't go away. Ms. Burton, I want to thank you for your work, but in the East Tampa CAC and your dedication. However, I'm going to give the opportunity for other council members to speak. Mr. Vieira, would you like to add anything?
Not at this time. I'll wait until other comments. Not at this time.
Mr. Carlson?
Sure. Thank you for your advocacy over the years, and thank you for your dedication to this process. I know it wasn't easy, but your commitment to the good causes of helping people in East Tampa, I think, got through, and we didn't accomplish as much as you or we wanted, but I know that we heard what you had to say, and I think the staff heard it. And I know you'll continue advocating, and we look forward to listening to you with your smart advice and your your experience in the community.
Councilman Goods.
I'm not gonna say Ms. Burton, I'm gonna say Ms. Connie. As you rattled off the things that you talked about, you're 100% right. I can't deny when you're right. You know, I had this conversation with Ms. Van Loan and Mr. McCray, and some of the things that I thought should have moved have not moved. And I asked the questions, why have they moved? And I already know the answer. I just had to validate the answer. And I made it clear to Ms. Van Loan and Mr. McCray that there's money in that CRA. And I told them that the gravy on their plates are running over. They don't have enough staff to do the work. I'm just going to be honest with you. And I told them we need to outsource some of the stuff to get the work done. You're right. We should have had this rehab program running. Ms. McCaskill shouldn't have to come behind asking for money to do these 6 houses. I agree 100%. The county has come over to give us money for rehab. The problem is we ain't got nobody to work the program. We don't have the RFP ready. There are a lot of challenges that I'm upset about. That I'm really, really upset about. I can't talk legally about some of the park issues because there's some legal things going on. You know, the tree trimming grant, I mean, that's a wonderful program. Everyone loves that program. The list is miles long. It's a valuable program. But we need to do a little better outsourcing that to get the work done because it's just piling on. And people are hungry. We talked about the consultant. You know, I agree with you about the CDC. Now, they're asking for that kind of money when, you know, we should be able to get something back in return. I didn't know that. I mean, you know, I think if they're asking for that, and, you know, we should ask what can we get out of that deal? It's in East Tampa. It's taxpayers' money in East Tampa. I don't know what the ramifications are on their side, but that's a question we need to ask. Well, what can we do if we give you that kind of money? That's a question we need to ask. You know, I've talked about the lots. That's why I had the housing guy come here. We need to start buying property with our dollars. We have the dollars. We can do that. So we can control. We don't need an urban planner. We need a developer on that CAC over there to be able, when that strategic action plan comes, to be ready to move, to actually get the work done. So some of your questions are valid, and I've posed those questions. So what I would say is that I'm going to keep stressing the staff that we need to hire and we need to outsource this work to get it done. Because you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be behind with the rehab program at all. Because I talk about that all the time. And thank you for your work.
Yes.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Thank you for your sincerity and your speech this morning of fact. And I appreciate everything you said. And not only today, you've been speaking about this for many days in the past. This is not new from you. And I appreciate that. And I will say that I will meet with both the two individuals, the director and the East Tampa CRA manager, and find out exactly how they feel and what's going on. Am I directly responsible? Yes. Not I, but 6 others also. So I want to make sure that everything that we do, though there has been some improvement, I don't think I or anyone can say there's not, but it hasn't been as needed improvement in a quicker mannerism. So I want to find out first before I continue my investigation of what's going on. Not an investigation really, it's just a fact-finding fact. And I'm not questioning your facts, not at all. I'm not going to bring up your name or your facts or anything else. but I just want to find out what is the overall plan. One house at a time, get something done. But it's got to be done in a mannerism that one house at a time doesn't mean one today and one next year. So it's got to be done in a mannerism where we can see a immediate 5 or 6 houses, 7 houses, 10 houses going up in one spot. And I agree with Mr. Goods about buying property. If you don't have the property, you can't build a house. And the problem today we have in society, all of us, is that the cost of land almost exceeds the cost of the house. And there's where we're at. And not only now the cost of the house, and the shortage that we have now, when the 2x4 costs $199, it's $9 and something. So everything has gone up immensely. And so let's see what we find out. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And next CRA meeting, I think I'll be better informed of what's actually the facts that I'm looking for. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for your sincere reporting.
Thank you.
Councilman Vieira.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, it's funny, something that Councilman Miranda said kind of triggered something with me, which is that, you know, I think this council and all the city elected officials, including the mayor, were very united in terms of wanting to improve things in East Tampa and make robust improvements, whether it's for affordable housing, whether it's for public safety, roads, transportation, basic equity issues, et cetera, et cetera. And I do want to do my requisite investigation on some of the issues you've talked about, Ms. Burton, like with everyone. I thank you for your work and your service and whatnot. You know, one of the things that I think pains us all is that with a lot of the investments that we're making in areas like East Tampa that have been forgotten for far too long, we've dealt with in the last year and a half with economic and social trends that have just been devastating to so many people within the city of Tampa. But, you know, talking about COVID, talking about then the inflation, we're taking a look at inflation's right now 6%. The cost of housing, where the median cost of rental housing in Tampa Bay is about $1,400, which is about 35% of so of the median income here in the Tampa Bay area. That's totally out of control, and it threatens to overtake so many of the great gains that we've done. It's, you know, we have a resolve and a dedication to helping a forgotten area, but yet we have these economic indicators which threaten to eat up so much of the progress that we've done, which is so very, very frustrating. So it makes those issues that you were talking about, ma'am, even more compelling. But just wanted to add my 2 cents. Thank you.
Mr. Carlson.
Just one more quick thing that I know Ms. Burton also was frustrated with. When we all took over 2.5 years ago, and I won't remember the numbers exactly, but there was something like $3 million in the bank account for the East Tampa CRA. And that's money that the rest of the city is entrusting us to spend to help East Tampa. And we've all pushed, I know Ms. Burton pushed especially, to try to spend the money in an effective way. I don't remember the number, but there's still a large amount in the account. And there's an urgency, Mr. Goods talked about it, Ms. Burton talked about it, there's an urgency that we provide solutions, and we shouldn't have large amounts sitting in those accounts. So look forward to working with you in the future to make sure that we use that money effectively and that we deploy it quickly to make sure we solve the issues. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Burton?
I'm sorry.
May I give you some praise?
Yes.
Thank you very much. First of all, what I want to say is that stroking a check takes no time at all. But us 7 members up here are not housing authorities. We are not construction workers. We do not know what it takes to bring all these ideas that you and the CAC have thought of to fruition. And to Councilman Good's points, we need to put the right people in the right positions to make sure this is done right. We wouldn't want the community to spend their money willy-nilly. Ms. Burton, you are still on the board, are you not?
Yes.
I know that your fight, I know that your dedication will continue. and I look forward to seeing you at more and more CAC and CRA meetings. Ms. Burton, I thank you for all you have done for East Tampa.
Thank you.
Good morning again. Our item number 3 is an initiative by the Channel District CAC, and we have Ms. Kimberly Curtis, the chair of the Channel District CAC this morning. The Channel District CAC for the past several years has been talking about a marketing and a sort of an ombudsman to have in the Channel District CRA. And they have been putting money towards this project each year, but with all of the construction, the work to make that happen has sort of taken a back seat to all the construction we've been seeing in Channel District. And because this is slightly different than what we have done in the other CRAs, or like you see in the Ybor CRA for marketing initiatives, we wanted to make sure that CRA board was aware of what this initiative is and what they're trying to accomplish and do before we finalize the RFP and go out for an RFP to make this initiative happen. So with that, I am going to bring up Ms. Kimberly Curtis, and let me switch the PowerPoints.
Ms. Van Loan,
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt, and Ms. Curtis, I do not mean to interrupt. However, Mr. Nesbitt has just signed on. I can either ask you ladies nicely to wait for him, and or I can ask him to wait for you. Which would you prefer?
We would prefer if he would be able to go ahead and make his presentation, and I just need to know if he needs me to advance the slides or if he'll be doing it from his end.
Mr. Nesbitt, are you with us?
I am here.
Okay, do you need Ms. Van Loan to advance your slides, or can you do that yourself?
Yes, I would appreciate if she could advance the slides. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Please proceed.
Let's see. There we go. So good morning, everyone, and I apologize. I'm Sean Nesbitt. I'm the Chief Programs Officer for Florida Housing Coalition, and I've been asked to speak with you all today about community land trusts and just kind of explain the concept and how CRAs, and share an example of how CRAs have been using this model really as a way to, I like to think about planning for the success of your work and the investments that you're making in your communities and the anticipated increase in value and wanting to preserve affordability in the long term. So next slide. So as you know, CRAs really go into communities and looking at, slum and blight, and, that's a statutory language as well, but, that's really one of the primary purposes of CRAs is going into communities and removal of slum and blight. And a lot of times our communities start looking like this. And of course, when we're successful, they end up looking completely different, completely revitalized. Next slide. And so we go from that to this. The concerns about gentrification, and I like to separate gentrification from displacement. Gentrification, the bringing in or the attractiveness of a variety, particularly higher incomes, into communities is something that we want to see happen, but oftentimes that results in displacement, and we kind of put those two together, but they're really two different things. And so looking at how can we prevent displacement within our communities of those that have been in the community, and also maintaining option, that community has an option for those that would like to live in the community that may have lower incomes. Next slide. And so one of those ways that we can do that and be proactive about it, particularly at the beginning of our efforts, is a community land trust. And so what is a community land trust? As a approach or as a strategy, it's a vehicle of separating ownership of land from the building. And the reason you want to do that is that it captures the public investment and retains it with the housing unit, or in some cases, the commercial building, however you choose to use this model, to provide permanent affordability. And it captures that through the ground lease. And so the Community Land Trust is also the nonprofit that holds title to the land and conveys the home or the building on top of the land to a new owner. And the public investment is captured through that ground lease, and that ground lease will have resale restrictions that determine who the home can be sold to, the income level of the household the home can be sold to, as well as the price at which the home can be sold. Next slide. And so community land trusts are very common and growing in Florida. In the early days, when we first started to see community land trusts happening in Florida in the early 2000s, a lot of it was concentrated in high-cost communities down in Southeast Florida, in Palm Beach County particularly, Broward, and down into the Keys. But since that time, the community land trust model has spread across the state of Florida, up the other coast, here in the Tampa Bay area, the oldest being Bright Community Trust that started in Pinellas County, which is also partnering with other communities throughout the state. So now we have Central Florida. You may have heard of Hannibal Square, another CLT that got started in partnership with the city and the CRA, all the way up now into Tallahassee and Jacksonville. It's getting started. So really we see community land trusts really spreading throughout the state. It's a model that a lot of communities, local governments are looking towards in order to preserve the subsidy that they put into creating housing affordability. Next slide. And so CLTs can certainly help stabilize formerly disinvested neighborhoods. And it can do that at this time. We talked about early in the redevelopment cycle, there's opportunities for low-cost acquisitions. And sometimes it takes quite a bit to acquire, to produce more than what housing might be worth. But that's not always going to be the case. And so where there are opportunities for those low-cost acquisitions to get in there and to acquire property, to develop it, but also put the resale restrictions in place so that as the community does begin to grow in value, that you always have that affordability. Because again, it's not always going to be what you see today. And if we do our work right, things will be quite the opposite. And so we want to maintain affordability in communities going forward. Next slide. And so here again, this is just a visual of how CLT works for homeowners. The CLT owns the land. The eligible household will buy the house, so they own the house fee simple. They have a leasehold interest in the land, a 99-year lease, the functional equivalent of ownership, which allows the facilitation of financing to purchase the home. And so when that homeowner, they decide to sell, they do take some equity with them. It's not market returns, but they do get some return. And in just about all cases, from studies that we've seen, folks do move on to market rate housing after being in a CLT home ownership. So they're able to move on to fee simple on the market, and then they're able to pay it forward so that house is available to another household that was similarly situated as they were when they first moved in to their CLT. So it gets renters into the equity cycle equity ladder, I should say, and able to move those folks onto market where they might not have otherwise had the opportunity. But it's also there as an asset for several homeowners for generations to come. CLT is also utilized for rental. In the same way, the CLT owns the land and the developer or the owner of the improvements could either be a nonprofit or for-profit, or the CLT themselves. But in any case, the CLT maintains ownership of the land, and the housing units are developed on top of that. Just across the bay, Pinellas County utilizes this model quite often with all of its rental developments, with the CLT having ownership of the land and the developer is able to build on the improvements, but they have that property and forever will be used for affordable housing. And so this is, we think, the best way to get, permanent affordability versus a LORA. Even, for example, in tax credits, there's a 50-year affordability, but that's still not perpetuity. And so at some point, that affordability period is going to come to an end. And so this is a way to get permanent affordability, even with rental development. Next slide. And so thinking about, if you're looking to get started with the CRA, these are some things you will want to think about for a CLT. Where will it be focused from a geographic standpoint? Will you do both homeownership and rental, or kind of focus on one or the other? As a CLT, will the organization be, or will the corporation be only about stewardship, meaning that their primary role will be just to manage the ground leases? Or will the CLT also be an active developer within the CRA? These are something to think about. Where will it be housed? Will it be within an existing 501c3 in the community? For example, there are some local governments that have gone out for RFP to find a 501c3 to operate a CLT program. Or will it be a totally new CLT, totally new 501c3? Or will it be a program simply of the CRA or the local government, that meaning the CRA directly continues to own the land and lease it? And then how will it be governed? There's a traditional tripartite board that includes public representatives, community representatives, and actual residents within the CLT. Or will it be some other type of board composition? So these are things to kind of think about at the very beginning. And things that we at the Florida Housing Coalition can help walk through these decisions even before you get started with the actual organization. Next slide. So I just wanted to share an example of a CRA, CLT that has a very close relationship with the CRA, and that's the Delray Beach CLT down in Palm Beach County. They were started in 2006. And it was really the CRA, the community coming together, thinking about the future and what was going to happen as they began to do the work of redevelopment in the community. They knew the neighborhood was close to the downtown area. It was going to be very attractive, and they wanted to be proactive and kind of think about what the future pressure on the housing prices would be. And so the community, the CRA, residents all came together and decided that the CLT model was what they wanted to pursue, and put that in place, and being proactive, thinking about the future. And so that started in 2006. They had a lot of support directly from the CRA, from the city, from the housing authority. So the CRA gave them startup funding. It continues to provide some annual operational funding and land donations. They also partnered with the CLT to manage, to manage some rental properties that the CRA owns, so they still have a very, very close relationship with the CRA. They have 100 units within the CLT, and I think that's growing as we speak. Includes 91 owner-occupied and 6 rental units that they own themselves, and they manage, again, rental units that are owned by the CRA. And so they've continued to have a very close relationship with the CRA. The image you see here is of Corey Isles, which is their new development, also in partnership with the CRA that they're currently developing right now. Very beautiful homes, very close to downtown. So it's a very great example of how the CLT and the CRA are working together to build permanent affordability in Delray Beach. Next slide. And again, here's a kind of a breakdown of their operating revenue sources. And again, they continue to work very closely with the CRA. The CRA provides operating grant, which is just under a third of their operating annually. And again, that relates to the development that they do, particularly on land that is owned by the CRA. And then there's also the rental revenue, the rental management revenue that they get through the CRA. And you can see that's also quite a bit of their revenue on an annual basis. And then there's developer fees because they're a developer, and then ground lease fees, which is a very small amount, which is something you want to keep in mind with CLTs, that ground lease fees are very nominal, not meant to be onerous on homeowners, but really just meant to keep the relationship with the homeowner and the CLT. Next slide. So thinking about home ownership, which is really how CLTs are typically used, and there's within the ground lease, there's this resale formula that decides how much the home can be sold for. There are a few approaches based off of an appraisal or some fixed rate that you set based upon usually how incomes are tracking. And so, but all in all, thinking about that, what are your program priorities? Is it about wealth building? Is it more about maintaining affordability? Are you really trying to balance wealth building with affordability? Those are some key questions. Thinking about your market and also ease of administration are some of those factors. Next slide. And so if you want to know how this works, this is just one example of how the resale could work. And you can begin how it preserves affordability, but also can balance out with some wealth building for the homeowner. So in this example, there's total development costs of $230. If you're looking at just the improvements, appraised value of $180, and some subsidy there. So the house was actually sold for $165 with some additional purchase assistance. And at the bottom there, that $149 is what we call the base price, and that will be used to determine what the house will be sold for in the future. And so let's say this homeowner sells in year 10, the appraised value of their house is now $219. So that's a total appreciation of $39. And let's say their resale formula was based off the appraisal and that they would get 25% of the appreciation. So the new price is the $158,855 plus the value of their assumable purchase assistance. So they would then list this house for $174,855. And so again, and that comes with the purchase assistance that's assumable to each following homeowner. So you can see how all of the subsidy is captured through this ground lease, and hopefully the next buyer will not need any additional purchase assistance. They can purchase the house at 174,855 and get the purchase assistance that comes along with it. Next slide. That's the making the return to the homeowner. This is a slide that shows what the actual homeowner will get upon resale. So again, that purchase option price of $175 plus a prorated ground lease fee that they would have to pay, minus all of the costs, closing costs, pay off of loan balances. So this is just an estimation of, being able to walk away with just over $31,000. So this is, again, not market returns, but certainly better than renting. So next slide. And so if you compare the CLT to renting, let's say this is a three bedroom or even a two, being able to compare that to, $1,400 in rent versus very low mortgage payment, and being able to sell it and walk away with $31,000 versus zero from renting. No, it's not the 62 that they might walk away with a fee simple, but it is significantly more than renting. And again, you get the savings on your mortgage payment, so that counts as well as any other life choices. Hopefully, income is going up. So this really is a viable alternative to some folks that are currently renting to get into homeownership, but also at the same time creates a community asset for housing. Next slide.
Mr. Nesbitt, how many more slides do you have? How much more time do you need?
Just a couple of minutes here.
Thank you very much.
So thinking about the pipeline, there's tools available for home buyer education, and this is just one. And recommending that work with your counselors and educators to understand and really be able to teach the CLT approach to homeownership. Next slide. And there are lenders out there that do CLT. I know that's a question that always comes up. And Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have made it very easy for lenders to do CLT loans now. But again, education is still needed at the market level, and that's something Coalition can help with as well. Next slide. And these are our lenders that are in the market currently that are doing CLT loans for CLT homeowners. Next slide. And that concludes the presentation. Again, just wanted to give you an overview of CLTs and a little bit of detail of how it works, and some examples of how CLTs and CRAs are working together. And if there's time, I can take questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your program here. I'm going to start off to my left with Councilman Miranda.
Yes, sir. I appreciate very much for your reporting to us. And what I'm looking at is that so many moving parts that the general public doesn't see what we're looking at now. So I'm going to ask some questions here, or some comments anyway, regarding what I see, and maybe the public can understand, because I don't see the parts here. What is the Community Land Trust? Is that a government, or is that individuals, or what is it?
So the Community Land Trust, as it would exist, would be a 501c3, so a nonprofit.
You didn't answer the question. Is it a government subsidies, or is it individuals that form their own company and
That part I didn't understand. Yes. So the Community Land Trust is a 501c3, but is I guess a vehicle of would be a vehicle of the CRA to bring that investment into the community and also retain it.
So then the CRA buys the land?
Yeah, the CRA would buy the land, or it would be land that the CRA already owns. And as it's developed, that land would be
So then the
transferred
CRA
to
buys the
to
land, so that
CRT.
leaves out the, that's not individuals that are making an investment, forming a company, and then holding a lease on the land, and then somebody buys a house for 200-some thousand instead of 350,000, and so forth and so on. Is that the right avenue that I'm looking at?
Can you repeat the first part?
The CRA buys the land, which is not a part of individuals somewhere in the community or outside the state that owns the land. Is owned by the CRA themselves, and then the CRA holds the paper on the land. They buy the land, so I assume there's no mortgage on the land. Am I correct?
That is correct. That
So
is
then
correct.
the builder buys the land, and where I got some back and some slides. I see the developer makes a payment of some amount of money. I thought it was 18,000 or something towards, I forgot what it was, because the slides are moving there. There's too many moving parts at one time.
Yes, sir. So what that slide shows is a subsidy. So, for example, the developer may have some subsidy source that comes, and it could come through the CRA, could come through local government, but they bring that subsidy, and that goes to benefit the home buyer. For example, if they applied for SHIP dollars for development from the city of Tampa, that would flow to the homeowner or their home dollars, and that would be a direct subsidy from the developer to the home buyer to lower the purchase price.
And then I saw something, and I forget again, you got to allow me this because I didn't memorize it all quickly. There's so much left, and then the land rental is something like $17 a month or something like that. That's what I saw?
Yeah, so typically there's some ground lease fee. It's usually very small, $25, $30 a month. That would be paid from the homeowner to the CLT. And it's really a small amount, but yeah, that 17 was kind of a prorated, just thinking about, the date of sale, you would have some prorated around, but really what it relates to is the ground lease fee and the ground lease that they pay to the CLT. And it's really meant to be very small, help to cover some of the CLT's costs, but mainly to keep the communication relationship with the homeowner in CLT.
And I'm not ready to say that I like it or don't like it, but I'm looking at a much broader picture in my mind that the individual who buys that house, I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm sure that this is I like to see somebody that buys a house that has the opportunity to have an upswing in valuation of that property. So he or she or they that live there at some time or other comes out of the shackles of not being able to own the property in total. So the upswing in value, and usually there is an upswing in value in real estate, although there are downfalls that last 5 or 6, 7 years, but the real estate always usually comes back. And if those individuals that we're trying to help, at the time of resale, I saw that, I don't know how many years they were in that house or how many years they were paying, but their return to investment, the house was 200-some-odd-thousand minus plus, and then there was on the other side, on the right-hand side, there was a value to the homeowner that was, I can't tell you what the upswing of the whole item would be because I don't know the amount of years and what the average home would sell for on the upswing from the 200-some-odd-thousand in retail of the purchase price minus the land cost, which is a rental of $18, I guess, a month or a year or whatever it was. I wasn't prepared to catch all that stuff. So the general public hasn't seen what you're reporting, although they might have seen it on the slide real quickly. But I think it needs some more time in my mind for one guy, individual anyway, to find out. My whole purpose is to help that homeowner get a house that at the end, somewhere along working many hours, long hours, the whole family supporting to live there. At the end of that house, they have a value where they want to cash out or they want to get a loan against it. They can and do other things with it. But in this case, I don't know, there might be some stipulation in the purchase of those homes that there's only certain things that they can do with the upswing of value. Am I correct or not? because they
Yeah,
don't own the land.
In a sense, so really the purpose of the CLT is to kind of balance the need for affordability long-term with the wealth building. So, you know, yes, they're going to definitely get a part of that upswing. So it's not, they're not getting any of it. They're getting some part. But it's also the value to the community at large that, you know, this home is going to always be affordable. So, you know, it's the issue of, you know, do you have one family? Do you have many families? And so you're kind of really balancing the wealth building of individual households with the wider need for affordability in the community. And so, you know, that's what you have to look at.
Well, I'm just not at this time. I'm not saying I don't appreciate it or I don't like it. I'm in the middle of it because the rental of land, the word rental doesn't mean that they're going to own much at all at the end of the term of, if it's a 30-year mortgage or whatever it is, what is the upswing in value in 30 years, that property, I hope it doesn't continue like it's going, because it's just going haywire and crazy all over the United States. And if these things, they're not going to have any upswing or very minor upswing in only the value of the house, and it might solve the immediate need, but as it solve the long-term need where somebody has value and they feel like they've done something, that they have worked hard and paid their debt off, and now they have a house that if they paid $350,000, now it's worth $750,000, and they have an upswing to do something later on in life. In this case, they have a nice place. I'm not going to say they won't. A new place. I'm not going to say it's not, but they have still a rental. So this is half of what I want to see done. I want somebody to have something that they can hold on to and say, we did it, we've done it, and just like it was when I was growing up. And I'm not saying that this can't be done that way, but I got to know a lot much more about the Florida Housing Coalition and the Community Land Trust and what the rentals is compared to what, and it's just too quick for me to make a judgment at this time. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Councilman Goose.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for joining us. You know, I sit on the county AHAB board, and the county is going to this model to help people. The model is not built, Mr. Randa, you know, it's built to catapult people to the next level. That's what this is about. And when I looked at the program, what the county is going to do, their program, I saw CRA, how other areas that have CRAs are helping those folks catapult themselves with the rental, with the housing market the way it is. You know, when I first came to this council, I talked about, now the cities, you saw Tampa, the city's probably going to a CLT model. But I looked at another way where we have money in a CRA, that the CRA can have their own nonprofit. That's how it works. Their own nonprofit to be able to buy these lands, put some of these folks in homes, get them there, help them. They stay there 10 years, whatever. They make their money, whatever, and they move on to another area, whatever. And now the next person gets an opportunity. This is what this is all about, an opportunity to upswing another individual. I went to Charlotte. I've seen some of the models. I did go down to Delray Beach and look what they're doing. And that's why I want him to come, just to give the idea, the concept, to the board can just hear what's happening. You know, already the county board has already made a request to be a part of the city's board because we're a part of their board. And a lot of things we're doing, we're not talking to make things work collaboratively. And I think that was a good idea we did last week to make that motion. But I do like the concept. Need more information, of course, Mr. Randa, but I do like the concept because I think in some of these CRA, especially the East Tampa CRA, this could be a model to get some of that housing money moved to a nonprofit where they can control, buy land, get people in at an affordable rate, and get people feeling comfortable that they have accomplished something to move to the final level. So again, I appreciate you coming. I'm hoping that Ms. Vallon, you'll give this presentation to the CAC, let them evaluate it themselves, and maybe we can come back around and look at this again. Again, thank you, sir, for coming.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm familiar with the Community Land Trust concept. I think it's a good one. It's obviously been successful not only all over the state, but all over the country. About 2 years ago, when Ms. Post started with us, the city, and Mr. Massey is here to, I think, confirm this, but the city created, or the city helped create a nonprofit, a 501c3, and specifically geared toward being a community land trust. I know Ms. Post and her team have been very busy doing 100 other things, and I'm not sure we've done a whole lot with the community land trust. But I'm supportive of it. I think it's a good idea, a good concept. I'm almost surprised that lenders do get involved with it. And my question to you, sir, is if a lender can't foreclose on the property because the land trust owns the dirt, then what's the guarantee for the lender? Is it a direct or a secondary guarantee from the community land trust that the mortgage will be paid? And before you answer that, Mr. Massey looks like he wants to chime in on the CLT issue.
I did want to just briefly let the CRA board know, relative to what you were saying, Mr. Dingfelder, that the Florida Housing Coalition has already helped provide the city of Tampa documentation to create a community land trust, and there have been efforts underway to do that. I think if the CRA is interested in participating in that, it may make sense for Ms. Post and maybe Ms. Marley Wilkes, who have been heavily involved in that effort, to come and talk to you about the city's efforts. In working with the Florida Housing Coalition, what they had advised us is that really they advised against the government being the sole creator of the community land trust. It really needs to be a community-based effort. And so a lot of what Ms. Post and Ms. Wilkes' efforts have been to date has been trying to elicit support in other segments of the community. But I think it would be helpful, and I think it would broaden the conversation if you all are interested in moving forward with this concept, for them to come forward and talk to you and talk to how the CRA might be able to participate with the city in a combined effort. I don't think having separate community land trusts makes a whole lot of sense, but if we can combine our efforts and our resources together, I think that would make, in my opinion, would make a lot of sense. So I just want to make sure you are aware that there are efforts being made on the administrative side of things on that end. Relative, and Mr. Moran is right, and the community land trust concept is generally that the not-for-profit that's created, and it may involve the government, may not involve the government, but the not-for-profit community land trust would be the fee owner of the land, and there would be a long-term ground lease with restrictions in it to assure that the housing that was built there remained affordable, but would provide some sharing concept once the property is sold, so that there would be some sharing of the increase in value, hopefully, with that tenant that was there for a period of time, for want of a better word. So that's the general concept as I understand it, but just wanted to update the board.
And Mr. Chairman, I had a pending question to the presenter.
Yes, so on the lending side, so the lender absolutely can foreclose on the improvements, so that the loan will be secured by the value of the improvements and the homeowner's leasehold interest in the land. So a foreclosure could happen, but the good thing is the CLT is meant to prevent foreclosures from happening, because they do have the ability to cure defaults on behalf of the homeowner as part of the ground lease. And they also then have the ability to purchase the house, have the first right of repurchase. So if something does happen, the CLT has the first right of repurchase, so the community can maintain that house, and it's not lost to the market. But that's how the lending works.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, one more question?
Please.
So one of your slides spoke to the fact there were a minimal number of foreclosures, and I can see why, based upon what you just said, that the CLT has the right to step in and be involved in the cure. But I guess my next question would be is do we keep records of how many defaults there are in these scenarios? That they might be defaults with cures that never get to the foreclosure part. Do you have statistics on that?
I don't have any statistics, but I can speak anecdotally. Relatively few defaults, and that's really a testament to the education and counseling that home buyers receive up front to really prepare them for home ownership. And so, and then, you know, the affordability of it. So there's a lot that goes into making it a very sustainable home ownership experience. So,
thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It was excellent.
Councilman Carlson?
Thank you, and I assume we'll be talking about this again, so I'm not going to ask you questions, just put out some thoughts quickly for us to think about. I think the importance is in the details of all of this and how we define exactly what it is, what's in the agreements. Just a few key points. You talked about wealth building or building equity versus affordability, and I think we have to focus on both. We need to have affordable housing, but if we don't help people build equity or wealth, especially intergenerational wealth, then we haven't really accomplished very much in the long term. So we have to match that balance there. You talked about buying versus renting. I think that this should be used exclusively for purchases, not for renting. There are other programs that provide affordable housing for renting, but this is creating, as you presented anyway, single-family homes. And going back to your first premise of wealth building and affordability, the way we do that is not by getting people into renting, but by helping them buy and build equity. I think the link to the lease is important. It sounded like it's month to month or year to year. I wasn't exactly sure on that. I mention Singapore all the time because I live there, but they have a 94% home ownership. Ours state average is like 65%, and Tampa's is 48%, which is well below average of most cities. St. Pete's, I think, is 58%. The way Singapore has a 94%, one of the ways they have a 94% is that they have 99-year leases. And it sounds like this is not the program to have 99-year leases, but I think the length of the lease matters in how this is handled. I took a class in graduate school on race and poverty, and we read 5 or 6 books a week, and it was pounded into my head that spatial segregation is not a good idea. And so I would ask that we not buy whole blocks of land, that we buy individual parcels that are spaced out, distributed throughout the community, so there's not a density of poverty or people coming out of poverty. We need to make sure that we have communities with people at all different social economic levels so that we can help grow the community, bring the community up in total. I think the governance of this is really important. You talked about a 501c3. You all, my colleagues will remember as an example, the city of Tampa, One Tampa, which was a program of the city, was converted to a nonprofit, and we only found out because I looked it up by accident. And we had a presentation a couple weeks ago on the nonprofits that are quote unquote controlled by the city. There has to be transparency on this. It's important how it's governed, who's involved in it. We need to make sure there's fairness in who's governing it, and we need to make sure that the public sees that there's transparency. Although it may be a 501c3, the public is paying for it through the city or through the CRA, and we need to make sure there's lots of transparency and that it's being handled equitably. Another thing is that we've had cases come before us where the city gave away pieces of land in East Tampa, or we sold them for $10,000 or less. If this is going to be a program where we're trying to help people buy homes, it seems like it doesn't make sense to do it, at least today, on land that's worth below a certain amount. Maybe as we go into the future, it will make sense to do that. But if we're looking at this as a way to subsidize housing immediately, we should do it in areas where the land is above some minimal threshold. And you know, we've had developers come before us that say that the affordable housing that they're offering is somewhere between like $225 and $280. I forgot what the minimum number is now, but those numbers seem high to the public. Well, if the land is free today, or the land is $10,000, there's not a very big subsidy there that would bring the price down to help people afford to buy it. So we need to think about the price of land and how we would handle that. And also, it wasn't clear to me exactly what the criteria is for buyers, and then also how we would vet buyers, or would we have any role in vetting buyers in the resale situation. And then the last thing, which I think is super important, the private sector tells us that if the city and county open up more to other developers developing and getting federal and other grants by themselves directly without having to go through another third party, that they could build housing at a much faster rate. There's been criticism, mostly about the past administration, about how RFPs were handled, and we just need to make sure that we provide fairness so that the nonprofits and for-profits all have a fair chance to build on these spots, and that we're not just favoring one developer or nonprofit over another. Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I appreciate the comments made by everyone. As I've said before, and as we all know, home ownership is the American dream. And as we look at rising prices in real estate, rising prices in rents, this is a step in the direction where we're allowing people to get out of that cycle of what it seems like never-ending rental and getting into that home ownership, so they have some stability and they have that pathway to the American dream. Everything has really been said. I appreciate this presentation. It was very thorough. Thank you very much.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, sir. No, a lot of things already said. I mean, this really appears to be a very innovative, interventional way to make sure that we get quality housing available to people who would otherwise be denied it. But, again, like I said before, what really worries me is how much we are, to quote Bob Seger, sailing against the wind here, just greatly with rising house prices, continued inflation. There's really, if you look at these economic trends, they're really a nightmare for the American middle class. And if they're a nightmare for the American middle class, imagine what they are for people who are working desperately to get into the American middle class, to working class folks, lower income folks, et cetera. There's a, economic tidal wave that continues to grow for so many people, and it's just troubling. And I see programs like this, and I'm glad that they can, again, race against the wind, so to speak. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. Thank you very much for this this report. You are working with the administration right now on this type of project, are you not?
With the city?
Yes.
Yes, we've been working with the city. Yes.
Thank you. And you're also working with the county on this type of project.
Yes, we are. The county's moving forward.
With the city and the county and the CRA, I don't want to use the words conflict of interest, but doesn't that tend to limit our resources?
Not necessarily. And I would say the county's efforts, I just want to frame them a little bit. So, of course, the county and the city are working in two different contexts. And, this is a large community geographically as well as population. And so the county's focus is a little bit different than what your focus will be with the CRA and certainly in the city. So I would say not necessarily limiting in scope, but resources that that's an internal question to look at. The resources that are available. Is it going to be better to combine your resources with the city? Particularly if you're going to be investing in the same areas, or if it's better to do something separately that you have your own control over what happens.
Okay, thank you. One more quick question. I had heard Councilman Carlson mention the word generational wealth, and with the leasing or the renting of the dirt or the property itself, are people going to actually be able to achieve generational wealth? And what I mean by that, will this house be able to be handed down from parents to children, maybe even to grandchildren, with only a 99-year lease and not actually owning the land?
So they still have fees. They have fee simple in the house. So yes, they can. The answer is yes. The house is inheritable to heirs according to the ground lease. And so the heir would assume the ground lease at that point, and fee simple in the house.
But however, the governmental entity will still, or the community will still be owning the land itself.
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilman Goos.
I know Mr. Mr. Massey said that the city was working, because I remember I made that motion a long time ago for us to get that program. But the only problem I have is that's fine to see me be working, but when I look at the CRA, like Mr. Nesbitt said, we're talking about possibly two different pots of money, the city money and the CRA money. And you could possibly have two different types of criteria, because the city may have certain criteria versus the CRA can have their own independent and have their own type of criteria that may be a little bit different. Like the county is going to have their own type of criteria what they're going to do. So I would say if we did move forward to make sure that the CRA has their leeway versus what the city may be doing, because it may be a little more leeway on this end to the right versus the left. So just something to think about, gentlemen. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Nesbitt, thank you very much for this report.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Loan?
So good morning again, and I would like to bring up Kimberly Curtis with the Channel District CAC.
Ms. Curtis, thank you very much for your patience. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely, no problem. Good morning, Chair and CRA Board. So before we get into a very, very brief presentation, I'll give you a little bit of history and context and background on what I'm going to be showing you in the presentation. Over the course of the last couple years, we have discussed a lot of new initiatives that we would like to, plan on doing and implementing in the Channel District, in the near future and, a little bit longer term. And we've come up with some really good ideas and programs. But as you know, the CRA manager and staff is, they have a lot on their plate with the multiple CRAs that they oversee. So we tried to start coming up with a way to not continue to burden them with more ideas and initiatives for us specifically, but how can we come up with an idea or a program within the district that we fund with some of our money to help supplement the CRA manager and staff so they don't have so many new things to take on themselves. So this is something that collectively over the last, I'd say probably 18 months or so, we've discussed. We sort of put it on hold last year with COVID, obviously, but at this point, I think we are ready to move forward. Our CAC has voted unanimously to program funds for this, so we have already, set those aside in our budget, pending any approvals that we may need or questions that may need to be answered. So without any further explanation before I jump into this and you know exactly what we're talking about, I'll run you through this very quickly, and then afterwards you guys are free to ask me any questions. So where do I go to? Show you slides. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so what we have kind of come up with, and this isn't an official job title, if you will, but we're kind of looking to cover a lot of bases with this particular person that we would like to engage. So right now we're kind of calling it our marketing and communications / community ambassador. So I'll kind of get into the goals and the overview of what we're really looking for. This person would not be a city employee. We are not asking to create a new position to be an employee position. So we would use the city RFP process to basically establish a contract with a marketing and communications, public relations, whether it be an actual firm with an assigned person or an independent contractor that maybe this is their specialty. We'd be looking for them to have experience in brand review and management, marketing, public relations, digital, social media, website management, all specific just to the Channel District. We would be looking for them to provide services to really help us promote economic development within the district, and and really be that person to help us coordinate within our own CAC and to get out into the community and really provide information to the community that us as a CAC, group that only meets once a month really, struggle to do. And so we would be asking them to, really assign one person, if it's a firm or if it's an independent contractor, that they would be, located in the Channel District to really maintain regular contact with the residents, the business owners, and also regular ongoing contact with all of the CRA staff and administration and the CAC committee. So we'd be ideally, whether it's in the beginning or a little bit later on, ideally we'd like for them to be in an actual space in the district and have regular office hours for people to come in, whether it be residents, visitors, business owners, other neighborhood organizations to come in and be able to coordinate with them and speak to them, during regular hours or during appointments. So this is kind of a list of some of the things that we ideally would like to take off the plate of our CRA staff and ask this person to handle. So we would be doing a district brand and marketing strategy, and that's something that we've started working on just ideally a little bit with our current update to our strategic action plan, which you guys will be seeing very soon. So we've talked about creating really a brand and an image for the district. So we would have this person kind of really be that point person to roll that out for us. And the focus of that would really be promoting it as a good work, live, play community, to really reach out and do some outreach to prospective business owners to come in to fill some of our empty retail spaces that we have in the district. And there's also new ones that will be coming online over the course of the next few years that we'll be looking to fill. We really want this person to also be able to help existing businesses navigate things such as our grant programs, give them information on that, provide them with assistance in resources, how to really help them know the right people to contact within the city if they have questions or they need assistance with business issues. So we want this person to really be able to kind of filter some of the things that our community needs, and then be able to determine the right person to get them to at the city if it's something that they can't handle directly. A big part of this role would be social media, newsletters, community newsletters, things like that, reaching out to the community to help promote, programs that maybe the CRA is implementing, things like community events. We really like this person to be able to reach out to the community and say, here's an event we're having. If you'd like to volunteer, here's how you can sign up. Or even, reach out to people and say, hey, we have empty, positions coming up on the CAC. If you'd like more information, here it is, or here's who to go to get that information. We'd like to, this is something we have discussed with parks over the last couple of years. We'd like this person to be able to just assist the Parks Department with doing programming. Right before COVID, of course, as we're getting ready to open Madison Street Park, we actually sent out a survey into the community to ask people what kind of programming they would like to see in Madison Street Park. And it was things such as maybe a live band or a group fitness or, organized, group team sport activities like pickleball and things like that. But, as you know, too, we have a lot of park spaces, and the Parks Department is also, overwhelmed at times. And we'd like to really have multiple events, per quarter or per year in those parks in the district. And we feel like this person could be a real asset to assist the Parks Department with maybe locating a fitness instructor to and coordinating those times, and then reaching out to the community and saying, hey, you asked for it, now we're doing it, and here's when it is, and here's how you can sign up. This person would be really just a central information hub for all businesses and residents and visitors in the district. They could answer questions about our ongoing construction projects. They could tell them about future projects that we have planned. We might develop some type of new resident packet that would they could hand that out to new residents or new businesses, just to give them the resources and in one place that they would need to know how to really maximize being a new resident, or a new business in the district. So they could be a first point of contact for our grant programs that we're working on now. They could help them with just application intakes, and then kind of just to be a point of contact and just to kind of assist the staff with kind of answering general questions and things like that, that I think would streamline the process more for staff. And obviously they would refer to all city departments as required. So, and that's really it. Where do I go to exit this? Oh, there we go. Okay. So that's really it. That's our plan. That's everything we've kind of talked about over time, and would like to have this person do. So if anybody has questions, happy to take them.
I'm going to start with Councilman Vieira. Do you have any comments or questions?
No, sir.
Councilman Carlson.
Is Ms. Van Loan still there?
She is. Yes, sir.
Sorry if I missed it, but what's the status of the strategic action plan for Channel District?
We expect the draft to be delivered in December to start being reviewed by the CAC and the community and the public.
I think all of this sounded great. This is my industry, so I'm always in favor of marketing and communication. But I think it has to be a part of the strategic action plan, and
yes.
it has to be considered with that. After the kind of manufactured controversy about the Straz Center investment a few weeks ago, or a month ago, I got lots of calls to ask what's the status of either shutting down or putting some kind of cap on Channel District in downtown CRAs, because there's so many areas of the city that would love to have marketing help and branding help and help recruiting of Publix and all these other things. They'd like to have their potholes fixed. So I think we have to look at the context of what's the strategic action plan overall, what's needed. Probably there will be some need for part of all of this, but we need to figure out also in that context, is this CRA going to continue for 10 more years? Is it going to have a cap of dollars at some point, or will we say that 20% of the money will stay in it for the next 10 years, but the rest of it will be put in the general fund, allocated to a parks fund or something? There calls for lots of different things. But if we voted on this out of context, I think we would get a lot of pushback from other neighborhoods throughout the city who would say, why don't we have that? And how is it fair that one neighborhood gets this and the others don't? But if we look at in the context of the strategic action plan and what our plans are with the CRA, then it would then we can figure out how to do this. Thank you.
Councilman Dickfelder.
Hey, Kimberly.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
Of
And
course.
as Chairman said, thanks for your patience. Thanks for serving as chair of the CAC. I know you're putting in a lot of time and effort.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think it sounds pretty neat. Especially I don't know, everything about what's going on down there, but I think especially as related to community events. So maybe it's somebody who actually can help, plan. I don't think city staffers have the time or the ability or direction to help you guys plan events, activate the parks as you indicate on the handout. So maybe a more significant part of their time would be related to that, if that's the CAC's desire. Overall, I can see where the district is sort of maturing at this point. A lot of the actual construction projects are either ongoing or wrapping up, and now I can see where we're kind of maturing to the next level, kind of like the downtown district. Maybe. So anyway, I think if we can sort of tiptoe into this, and maybe a one-year pilot project, try not to invest too much money in terms of leasing space. Maybe with your connections, you can find somebody to donate some space, in terms of the desk or the office. That might be helpful as well. Thank you.
Councilman Goode.
Well, I appreciate the concept, but I never like to tell CRAs what to do with their money. I like to make sure they're good projects to spend their money on. I look at the FY 2020. We have a CRA Communications and Projects Coordinator coming on board. So I'm just wondering how, Ms. Van Loan, maybe you can answer this question. If we allow the Channel District to get this other person, how will our person intertwine with their person, and Because I was of the concept, and Mr. Carlson kind of made this because he's the marketing guy here, that this person here for FY20 will be doing these type of things for all of the districts. Was I correct with that, saying that?
Yes, sorry. Yes, you're correct, but we do have 8 CACs, and you have, just to give you an example, West Tampa just did 5 grant programs that you approved over the summer, and now there's going to be that rollout. And going out downtown now would like to focus more. They adopted the facade grant program, but with 2 people working for CRAs, their ability to go door to door and do that outreach to let the businesses know that we have these programs now and you take advantage of it. The Channel District is also going to be coming back to you with their business grants, just like West Tampa did, to help some of their tenants and those retail spaces and some of the older buildings to get, as she mentioned, some of these vacant spaces filled up. So all of these programs, we went from a little fence grant and went a facade grant to now potentially having 15 grants across the CRAs or more in the next 18 months. And one person cannot do all of this and take all of that on, along with the community engagement that we're also expecting them to do, and helping 8 CACs with newsletters, or also just working to manage for those that do have their own contracts, that maybe someone has something special or a little bit more specialized, or needs assistance or a service that goes beyond what our person could do. Our person will then help them procure that consultant and contract, and then manage that contract.
That's why I wanted the board to hear that, Ms. Van Loan. Your plate is full. Your plate is full. And the CRAs are no longer these small CRAs where they started. They're growing now. East Tampa has needs. We don't have enough staff. And I see the need, like I said, to outsource some of the stuff. You can't handle it alone. You don't have your assistant director yet to even help you yet, nor do we have the project person. And I'm just going to suggest that we need to look at that, take a strong look at that with Ms. Van Loan. She is our employee, and we need to make sure that we give her the go-ahead to go ahead and be able to hire people to get some of this work that we need done. We have a lot of work in some of these CRAs, gentlemen, that has to get done. And I can't keep focusing on East Tampa, but they are the worst that are far behind that need to get moving much faster. And she needs employees to get some of this work done. So we need to kind of look and evaluate, meet with her, evaluate how many more employees that she may need to hire to be able to get these RFPs out, get these projects going, to get some of those struggling CRAs moving. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And I'm really liking your concept and your idea. I do agree with Councilman Carlson. I would like for you to bring this back to us when you bring the strategic action plan. But I also have to ask Ms. Van Loan a couple of questions, please.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Van Loan, with every CAC there are some touchy subjects, and what I mean by that is sunshine laws. This person that will be brought in, will they be the admin? Will they give the administration, will they give the final approval to the content, or will your office be giving final approval to this content?
Oh, no, you would think of it just like if we hired a consultant like we have now with Valerin, who does our newsletters. They develop the content, we brainstorm, we let them know what our priorities are for this quarter. We give them what some of the talking points are. They write that content. We talk about the pictures. They give us the drafts, and then the drafts are reviewed. Some of the CACs have a subcommittee of their CAC that reviews the drafts, and in others, it is the CRA staff that does that final review of the newsletters. But everything goes to our staff before anything is finalized.
Excellent. And again, there are some touchy subjects, and I just want to make sure that all bases are covered. Can I finish? That all bases are covered. Again, the concept is wonderful. I do appreciate it. Bring it back to us for the strategic action plan. Councilman Carlson.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just with my marketing PR hat on, there's never enough money or people in any government agency or nonprofit and most companies to do all the communication that we need to do or want to do. one idea, back up a second, before I got on council, through my firm, I did a lot of pro bono work with neighborhood associations, creating free logos for them, helping them with their newsletters and websites and other things. We need that capacity building in all of our neighborhoods. There are some neighborhoods they can't even get people to meet because they don't know how to communicate to rally them. What one suggestion would be, there was a lot in this position that was talked about, and some of it is logistics, not marketing, branding, communication. And so one idea would be to get a dedicated marketing, branding person who would be assigned to neighborhoods in the city that would maybe report to Adam Smith with a dotted line to neighborhood relations. And that person would help build capacity for communication within neighborhoods and help them separately define, maybe working with an outside agency. But then the CRA would fund some part of that through each of the CRAs that it made sense to do that. So we would have some guaranteed part of their time to work with some of the specific districts. Anyway, just an idea. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions before I give final words? Thank you.
Is there a motion, Ms. Van Loon, that would help move this along?
Councilman Dingfelder, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So far, we've heard the suggestion that it would like to be brought back with the SAP, but if someone wants to go in a different direction.
When is the SAP?
We will probably have your meeting just in a few weeks at December 9th. I don't know if we'll have the draft by December 9th, but we will be distributing it to you in December for review. So it would either be December 9th or the January 20th.
And is it anticipated then that this idea, this concept would be included in the SAP?
The consultant heard a lot from the CAC members and at the workshops, the importance of marketing Channel District and really trying to help build that, I don't want to say brand because brand's the wrong word, but that feeling and that sense of community when you have a sudden influx of so many people and a lot of renters and a lot of young people, and really looking to the CRA to say, okay, this is our community, this is our neighborhood, which is encompassed within the CRA fully, and how does the CRA help us position to create that kind of community as we bring our community up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And real quickly, let me piggyback on that for just a second. So when we first started talking about this position, we had a lot of ideas, and then when we started working with our consultants on the SAP update, we were able, through the community workshops that we did, and I actually attended every one that we had through the SAP process this past year. I've been extremely engaged with SNME myself as well, working with them closely through this whole process. And this kind of final, almost semi-final, description of this position has really, we've gotten to this point because of the SAP update. I've listened to what the community has had to say. SNME has listened. The draft you're going to see, I've seen the first version of that, and it's very good. It's very comprehensive. It's captured what the community has said that they want, and this, for lack of a better term, position or contract person will, those descriptions and the things that I've put in this presentation really do align with everything that you will see in the SAP. And that's kind of how we got to this sort of almost final version of this description was from that process of the SAP update.
Let me just interrupt quickly. I do think from a legal perspective, if we can tie it to the SAP update and what's going to be in the update of the community redevelopment plan, legally that makes more sense. We're tied, the legal parameters under which you operate is that we need to be consistent with 163 and with the community redevelopment plan. So if these types of efforts are recognized in that update, I think it will be a fairly easy thing for you all to support probably in the January, it sounds, time frame, but I think
Mr. Massey, by me asking that this concept be brought back with the strategic action plan and or be included in the strategic action plan, will that be enough, or will the motion
I think that motion is fine, sir.
That statement or that motion, or do we need a motion?
You can make that a motion if you would like, and that would be supportive of Ms. Curtis's efforts, I think, so.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Dingfelder. Roll call vote.
Carlson.
Yes.
Booths.
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Viera. Maniscalco. Dingfelder.
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Moving on with the agenda. Item number 4 is our staff reports, and we have a couple of introductions before we get to our very brief, quick PowerPoints. We wanted to recognize Detective Curtis Williams. He is our East Tampa environmental detective. When the East Tampa CRA was first created and we had our original CRP, we had 29 chronic illegal dumping sites. Chronic meaning that they were continuously basically established areas that were being utilized by people who didn't want to pay fees and were trying to find an easy way out to dump, and really had a negative impact on our community. And one of the very first initiatives when the CRA was established was to have the environmental detective position. It was the first one in our state, and it may still be the only one in our state. If we're not, we're one of very few. And in the past 18 months, we have been so blessed to have Detective Williams as our environmental detective. He has taken it to the next level beyond just looking at, again, instead of addressing just the aftermath and the cleanup, how do we address illegal dumping and also the other ills that come with it. Vacant houses, the overgrown, again, unwanted behavior that tends to go with that, and also unsafe conditions when you have people that are now trying to utilize vacant properties, overgrown properties, and then are living in complete squalor in very unsafe conditions. And Detective Williams helped in 2 occasions where we had people living behind some vacant properties. And so he's gone so above and beyond in trying to address these issues in our community. And we were very lucky in October to have this program recognized by the Florida Redevelopment Association. So if I can have Mr. D queue up, we have a 2-minute video we'd like to share with you, and then I'll bring up Detective Williams.
The award is the Best Management Program and Creative Partnerships. My role collectively with the members of the East Tampa CRA was to develop a multifaceted approach to blighted-related issues. But we also took on a public education approach through a Ban the Blight campaign to educate the public newsletters, to educate them on laws and things that we can do together to help fight the blight.
Our CAC and CRA were able to raise funds for this detective to help stop the illegal dumping and to make sure that the homes were secure in the neighborhood. Without a doubt, it's a domino effect. If we can take one neighborhood, if we can take one home, if we can take one property and make sure that it is clean, secure, and without junk, trash, and debris, it's going to help the people living next to them, behind them, and on the next block.
A lot of my targets are gathered through public feedback, through the partnership meetings. So I begin to see, sometimes not even by questioning, but just listening during the meetings, what the public expects or what they would like to see dealt with. There was a particular building within East Tampa that spans an entire city block that was known for years for crime, and the community wanted something done about it. So the building was eventually vacated and is now set to be demolished, and is going to be affordable housing is going to go in place of that problem property. I'm looking for a long-term solution to these long-term problems.
As chair of the CRA board for the city of Tampa, it's projects like these that will help define our communities and our CRAs as one of the finest in the state of Florida.
They have some guy here, ain't it?
So with that, I give you our Detective Williams.
Good morning, council. It's always a pleasure to see you.
I just want to say it's been a privilege working with the East Tampa CRA, being a very small part of all the great things they do in the CAC. This is a relationship program, so I couldn't have done it without the help of East Tampa community, code enforcement, the fire marshals, and the legal department. I just want to thank everybody for coming together and working as a team to help East Tampa. Thank you.
Anybody would like to make any comments? Councilman Maniscalco.
That was excellent. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful video there, and sir, thank you, Detective, for all your work. And we know that, you know, blight has such a negative spiral effect on a lot of communities where people who work hard and play by the rules and you know, raising their families right, et cetera, are the victims of so much of the dumping and the blight that you're talking about. And not just does that hurt communities, but it increases crime, it increases dysfunction. It has a real, again, a spiral effect, and you and your work show that. So just thank you for all your work, and it's good to see our good friend, Mr. McCray there, looking sharp as always, sir. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Carlson. Councilman Dingfelder.
Congratulations, sir. Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Councilman Goose.
You know, a valuable program. I've said that from day one. It works. You know, some people in the community didn't understand, but as you see Detective Williams out there actually looking at being proactive in some of the problems that we have, and that's the key, being proactive, identifying those areas, and again, looking at some of those convenience stores that are a problem, some of our problem issues, trash and litter all over the place. So I just thank you for your work you're doing, and congratulations on the awards you received.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Detective Williams. From yesterday to today to tomorrow, you've been the same individual trying to do the right thing to help humanity. Appreciate it very much, and God bless you.
Thank you,
Detective, I thank you very much for the hard work you do in the East Tampa CRA. And I also congratulate you on this state award. You have shown the state and got us recognition. When I say us, I mean the CRA board got us recognition for the hard work that you, the CAC, and the rest of your partners have done to help clean up the slum and blight in East Tampa. I thank you very much, my friend.
It's an honor. Thank you.
And that's a perfect segue. We also have, per your restated motion this morning, I do have Keith O'Connor here to address Mr. Good's request, and I'll bring him up now.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Chairman. Keith O'Connor, Manager of Neighborhood Enhancement. I understand you guys had a few questions about the enhancement team, so I wanted to give you a brief overview of how we deploy them, how many we have, and go over some of the questions that I know you had, and if you have any additional questions, I'll answer those. So our neighborhood enhancement teams, formerly known as Clean City, there are 38 full-time employees and 5 part-time employees in those crews. They are spread throughout the city in our 6 districts, which the code enforcement and the enhancement teams work together collectively to improve those areas. So each district has a minimum of 6 enhancement employees, and the CRA, as you know, funds 4 full-time employees and 5 of the part-time employees for their specific area. So they are basically complaint-based, deployed every morning with their route sheets where the complaints come in through our customer service center, and complaints that also come directly either to me or to the code inspectors, or even from your constituents, the complaints come in that way. So they're deployed each day to the complaint areas. Now, over time, there have been some areas that are habitually and chronically plagued with litter and blight issues. A good example would be the Nebraska corridor, where we're literally out there every day cleaning up. And that, like I said, is complaint-based, and that's why they're drawn there. I understand the question came up about Lake Avenue. Lake Avenue recently has been a challenging area. I've been in direct contact with Major Calvin Johnson and Captain Les Richardson, and of course Curtis Williams, who I'll say is absolutely doing an excellent job for us. But the area along Lake, particularly from 15th Street to 29th Street, has had some issues, and we're working directly with them. There's areas along Lake where people are congregating, and once the congregation happens, that's when the litter and debris and stuff accumulates. As far as the individual property owners or businesses, we address them directly when the litter and debris is on their property. They can be cited under sections 1947 and 1949. Typically, we give them a notice, putting on notice to clean the property. They get 21 days to clean it, and we check on that. Normally, that works. If it progresses, they can go before the magistrate for additional sanctions. As far as dumpsters and the overflowing dumpsters on some properties, we've seen a lot of that lately. When we get those complaints, we go out there, we speak to the owners or management, and then we do a referral to solid waste. And sometimes it's just that they need additional pickups, or they need a larger container to address those problems. Additionally, we give them those 21 days to correct the problems. They got to get that trash back in the bins, because the trucks will not, they're only picking up the bins. They're not getting out and picking up what's laying around there. So just real quick, some stats for the last fiscal year. We've removed nearly 3,200 tons of debris throughout the city, and we've processed 2,154 work orders. Like I said in the beginning, those are the orders that come in as complaints, and they pick them up in the morning with their route sheets to do that. So that's my brief overview. If you guys have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, let's go to Councilman Goods first.
Well, Keith, thanks for joining us this morning. Of course, I get tons of calls for my district, especially in the middle portion. I just wanted to make sure that people talk about the clean team, enhancement team, and just want to make sure that they're saying we're on the main corridor, but they're looking at some of these side streets as well. So I didn't know is the CRA that we pay for has a policy of we're just on the main corridors. I know State Representative Diane Hart was asking me, I didn't have the answer to that question. So it's just the main arterial arteries, or are we some of these side streets as well, trying to look at some of this debris and litter as well?
Yeah, we're hitting all the areas, but like I said, they're complaint-based, so as you can imagine, we do get more complaints on the main corridors because there's more people there. But we can work with the CRA, and we do. If there's any particular areas we need to address more, we can always move the resources there and get the attention that it needs.
And I know you guys, don't have as many as you need to try to get to every complaint you get when you can, but I know the council is looking for the future. The TPD is going to bring something about that code enforcement board, and I think this might be able to help your group with some of these complaints and make some of these people start cleaning their yards up and cleaning some of their businesses up. And I think that's going to be a big help in the future. So I hope we can get that implemented sooner rather than later. I guess the last thing, you talked about the dumpsters. That was a key point. So your group is working with solid waste in reference to those dumpsters as well, correct?
Exactly. We a lot of times we get the initial complaint, we go out there, and then the referral will go to solid waste. They'll send out their inspectors and address the problems with those, whatever they need to do to fix the problem.
Okay, I don't have any more questions, Chairman.
Comments or questions, anyone? Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks, Keith, for all you do. So I know this is not specifically, not yet specifically a CRA area, but I hope Mr. Massey will give me some leeway on that. But tell me what's going on in Sulphur Springs. I've been, that's part of the city. We don't address it too much, but it's really, I think, one of the most difficult parts of the city, and I'm just wondering, from your perspective in code enforcement and trash and debris and that sort of thing, is that a high priority area for you guys?
Yeah, Sulphur Spring is definitely a very high priority area. I do get a lot of complaints about the litter, you know, all along Nebraska up that way, and in addition to the off and on ramps of the interstate. We do address those weekly. I get weekly reports on the cleanups on the ramps and stuff. But it is a challenging problem as it.
I was also more specifically thinking about the neighborhood itself, in Sulphur Springs, running from the river up to up to Bush. Do we get the mattresses and the kind of things that we talk about in East Tampa? When I drive through Sulphur Springs, I tend to see a fair amount of that as well.
Yes, yes, we do get them, and you're right. There's probably more of that kind of debris in that neighborhood than in Sums, but we are there picking them up, and anytime we get a complaint, we go right out there to get them, and they pick them up as they patrol the area.
Are we, or could we, instead of just being reactive in that neighborhood, are we also proactive in that neighborhood? And the reason I say that is that neighborhood might not be the type of neighborhood that picks up the phone and knows who to call and has computers to get on and or spend the time to put in those complaints, but therefore it might need a little more proactivity as opposed to some other neighborhoods that where you would get those calls and emails.
Right, it does. I know what you're saying. We do have, and that's why they're teamed up with the inspectors who are out there, and the inspectors do a lot of the complaints themselves. They'll put the referrals in when they're out and see the mattresses or any debris that's on the right of way. In addition to, a lot of times if the debris is just put out in front of a house, that will go to a referral to solid waste, because then when they pick it up, they have the ability to charge the homeowner with that debris that they put out without calling in for the special pickup.
Okay. All right. Thanks, sir. Appreciate all you do.
Councilman Good.
Mr. Dingfellow, you always, trigger my mind when it was on and I missed it. And I was going to talk about it with East Tampa. And I don't know, I mentioned before with the solid waste director that sometimes we drive out and we see these things, but we don't call it in. And I'm just wondering, maybe you and maybe the interim director, even with our CRA, could come up with a plan or some dollars to look at, it's what I call the old junk man. Some type of grant that we can have folks and put them to work to see these things and collect some of this debris that's just hanging out. A lot of times I say, Mr. Stevens said, we mattresses all over the place, and we miss them, but people see them or they don't call them who to call. But I think, we got to be a little proactive ourselves, and I'm hoping that maybe, we can get our minds and our heads together and maybe find a grant, or if it's just East Tampa or it has a CRA, maybe they could put some dollars with the Anthem team to hire some other people to go out and be able to help partner to clean up some of the debris. So that's just an idea I want to throw out there to you, and you can kind of take it back and run with it if you can, and just let us know.
Mr. Massey.
Yeah, just a couple things. CRA dollars have to be spent in their respective areas, unfortunately. The other thing, just so that you're aware, when we contract with third parties, we have to go through the same state law mandates that the CRAs go through the same process that the city goes through. So it's not, we can't just hire someone on the
right. I understand, Mr. Massey. I understand that's the process. I was just giving an idea.
No, I hear you.
We can find an idea to do something. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Keith, for everything you and all the employees in your division are doing, but it's like a habit. But it's not, it's like smoking or whatever. And it's not the same people that are dumping. It's the people see a place where they dump and they think they dump. And if you go down Himes, right there, just one blocks off of Spruce, you know where that's at. There's a dumpster on the side of a little strip center that's got a gas station. I'm not going to mention anymore. But every time I drive by, there's a new visitor that drops something. I'm going to put it that way. And it's like, here I am, dump on me. And it's just something that just has to be addressed, and you're doing a great job on it. You're working very diligently. But it's just, if we can just catch somebody dumping, so we can just say, hey man, this is the end of it. I know there are laws and there's fines on it. Maybe we can clear up something, because it's just a habit. The location's a habit, and the people see it, they become habitual. And they think that it's common sense that you don't do it, but they see it there, that then you can do it, I guess.
That's true. They're copycat dumpers out there.
Yeah, but thank you what you guys are doing. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Since I always go last and I rush, I'm going to take Director's prerogative and just have a quick discussion with you about staffing, since that was such a big topic this morning, and it continues to be a thread and a concern. If we can have the PowerPoint up, please. So we have our, this is what, I don't know why, oh, it was on a, so this is what our adopted budget positions look like for FY22. We added, as we've talked about, the extra position in East Tampa, the communications and projects person, and then to have an aide in our office to help with some of this work. We have been in the process, we just finished the first round of interviews for the ED specialist in the East Tampa office. And we ran into an issue that is very good to have. We have two outstanding candidates, and one of the candidate is excellent and has an incredible background in housing and running the HUD programs and the CDBG programs, and on the ground and with people, and being in a small office and having to be a jack of all trades type of position. And we had a second candidate that has an incredible experience in the social services and RFPs and contract management and policy and writing very good documents, so that when you implement these programs or manage a third-party contract, they come with all of that experience. And Cedric and I were kind of going, we wish they could be one person, but that's too much work for one person. So as we keep talking, and actually I have to thank Councilman Goods for this, as we were talking the other day, my thoughts kept evolving. And so what I would like to do, is this going to, sorry, it's timed, is currently we have an ED specialist and a housing counselor in our East Tampa office as far as positions. And we have these two outstanding people, and one of them has all the housing background. If we hire a housing counselor, then that person is mostly focused only on the housing section. If we have two ED specialists and hire someone that has all of that housing background, plus the management of the third-party contracts, we are getting a higher caliber position and a lot more skills than we would have gotten with a housing counselor. HR can make this happen for us, and they have a process for it. So what I wanted to basically get your blessing to move forward with is to, and we can make this happen very quickly if we go this route, is Cedric and I would like to talk to HR about making a job offer to these two candidates, and we could have them on board within, amount of time. I'll give HR a week or so, especially with Thanksgiving, to make the job offer, get that worked out. They give their, hopefully they accept, they give their notices, and by very early in January, we could have these two positions filled at once and have two incredible people with lots of experience and everything that the East Tampa community has been asking for, and what the CRA board has been asking for. And I'll go back to that in 1 second. And then I just wanted to update you, I will have the two other positions filled by January. We just got the list from HR for the downtown, et cetera, manager. And I am starting to set up interviews, hopefully even if we can start getting some interviews next Monday and Tuesday, and finish the rest of the interviews the following week, so that we can get that narrowed down and make an offer before Christmas. So again, we can have that position filled very quickly. When we're down our existing positions, that does then mean that the rest of the staff is picking up more of that work, as opposed to filling the new positions first. So that's been our approach. And what I just wanted to sort of piggyback and talk real quickly about the discussions this morning. When Councilman Carlson first came on, and you all came on in 2019, one of the comments that Councilman Carlson made regularly at CRA board was the fact that the CRAs are so focused on real estate and the physical improvements and streets and sidewalks, and it was very much, we were organized as again, the physical remediation of slum and blight. And our staff specialties have all been focused on that and our work and our projects. And as I mentioned earlier, we have not been a department that has been a large grant provider. We have funded those that provide the grants. And I know it seems like a long drawn out process for those watching, but we are now having to shift gears and create an East Tampa office and West Tampa will be working in the same direction, that now has to have the housing skills that is not something existing staff had. And you can't just say, oh, this is a great RFP. You have to have staff that knows what they're writing and what they're doing to be able to write a good program, so that we are not constantly having a program that we are stumbling over and fixing every few months and that still isn't working. So we have been trying to get it done right the first time and take that time. And again, with these two people, getting them on board very quickly, those RFPs that have been started, the RFP for even the tree trimming grant and the RFP for the owner-occupied, for East Tampa's owner-occupied rehab, and all of these other grants that have been approved in the past 6 or 7 months, we'll be able to roll them out quickly. But again, I know it looks like it is a long drawn out process from the outside, but for us, we are completely having to shift gears and the nature of the work we do due to the evolving needs of our community and our city and our CRAs.
Councilman Goose.
I mean, she summed it up, gentlemen. I mean, it is what it is.
Yes.
We can't, we have a person who answers to us, but works with the administration, and we want to try to partner, but sometimes we have other people's money now. We got to move. We can't wait on the administration at this point. We have a lot of projects going on that people want to get out, and it's up to Ms. Van Loan to get the people in place to move them. I see Mr. Massey. I know we work Mr. Massey to death because I know he's overloaded up in that lawyer's office up there. They need people too. That's why some of the stuff is slow coming back, folks, because you have to read and vet the material to make sure you got the right stuff in there legally and so forth and so on. And you need to have people with the expertise to do the job. I mean, this here's a no-brainer, Ms. Van Loan. I mean, you got to get the people in. You say you got 2 qualified people. You can match them up. Let's get them in here. Let's get them to work because we got programs we got to get out. My trees got to get cut because people are calling every day about those trees, and that has to be outsourced. Cedric can't do all that. I mean, right now you're trying to run other CRAs and trying to interview people, do all this other stuff. You can't do it. You can't be up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning trying to work to get here, try to do presentations. You got to be able to sleep sometimes too. So I'm just saying you need to do what you need to do. This board will support you. Hire who you need to hire. Outsource what you got to outsource. But we got to get this money moving. Got to get it moving. Thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I agree with what my colleague just said. I want to thank you, Ms. Van Loan, for trying, as you said, diversify the offerings of what the CRA and the districts are doing into other services that are allowed by, Section 163, and then with that also listening to our request to focus more on affordable housing throughout all the districts. So thank you for both of those, and it shows that you're actually doing them. With that in mind, you might want to consider what those measures are going to be for success. Mr. Cruz just mentioned the trees. I don't remember from the weekly or monthly reports if it says how many trees were trimmed, but that is an example of something that's being done, and it's a service that I guess is allowed under law, and it's worth measuring that. And you mentioned grants. Once we are successful at getting grants, if we can show the taxpayers how we have leveraged this $40 million into getting $60 million or whatever it is, that's a good investment. I always talk about how the city, taxpayers throughout the city are subsidizing these CRAs, and we need to be especially good custodians of how we use the money. And if we're showing that we're able to leverage their money not only solve problems in these districts, but also to get other kinds of money and have matching money, that would be really valuable to the public. One last thing, and I know I asked this before in a previous meeting, but is there some kind of benchmark from the state association or other groups that would just tell us what the ratio of salary costs should be to, or number of staff should be to the total amount? So if we have 40 million total and you can distribute that across the districts, what should be our staff or salary expenses as a percentage of that?
We're at about, I think we're at 4.6% for FY22, and we are very low compared to the state average.
So that would be great when you're doing your reports, at least annually, for me anyway, to be able to also go back to taxpayers and say, look, we're adding staff, but we're keeping the percentages very low, especially compared to other cities. And with that, here's what we're able to leverage to get done. Thank you.
In our every year, our budget book, right on the first few pages where we give the overview, where we show the entire budget as the pie chart and the administrative costs, we actually call out in the text. And one of the points I made over the summer is even with 3 positions, our budgets and what's being asked of us again, to move the money, you have to have people do that. Our percentage is actually a lot less than when we had fewer people, because those dollars are growing, and with it comes the expectations that they will be delivered.
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Goods.
I won't belabor it. You know, I believe in saving money. Everyone does. But sometimes when you got to get the work done, you got to spend money to make money. Got to spend money to make money. And right now we have money that we got to spend, and adding these people, we can do grants, and Mr. Carter said we'll add more money to the pot. But right now, Ms. Vallone, all you're going to hear from me is you need to spend the money. You need to hire people or outsource this stuff to spend these people's money, because there are programs that we got to get done to show that we do care, so people won't say, there you go, you got those politicians there, they don't care, they ain't really moving our money. Love what the administration is doing, what the mayor's doing. But we do have a CRA, we have you. So we got to push that side as fast as we can, and whatever they can help us do on the administrative side, great. But we're counting on you to move this train. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Van Loan.
With that, I'll bring up Jesus for
Need
a
motion
very
on that,
brief.
Mr. Chair, for the motion? Did you need a motion for those new hires?
I will defer. I don't think I do, because we've got it funded. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of the direction.
I don't think she needs a motion. I think it's already part of the budget, but I think she wanted it, and I agree that she should present to you kind of her change in strategy regarding her hiring for the East Tampa positions. So,
thank you.
So staff has agreed to be very brief and very quick to get through our PowerPoint, and then we will be done for the morning. So with that, can you bring up the PowerPoint, and I'll bring up Jesus.
Good morning, Jesus Nino, the West Tampa and Drew Park CRA manager. If we can bring up the presentation, thank you. I'm always pretty quick anyway. In West Tampa, we have a lot of exciting stuff going on right now. One is that we're working with the city's Parks and Recreation Department to come up with new concept designs to improve all the parks, or not all the parks, but at least South Cinas and Ray Park over in West Tampa. And we hope to continue to work with the city to make those parks into huge assets for West Tampa. In addition, we're working with a consultant, Pond Company, to do a parking study for the area. Because of all the development that's occurring, the residents there are kind of concerned about the impacts for the future there on parking. So we're working with that consultant to come up with a study that will be presented to you once it's concluded. In addition, we're continuing to do the alley cleanups. The next few days we'll have completed close to 50 alleys, and some of those alleys actually cross multiple streets, so if you kind of break those up, then it would be over 60 alleys that are being cleaned up. I thank code enforcement. They're helping us educate the public out there on their responsibility to maintain those alleys after we're done cleaning them up.
Very good.
In addition, our clean team in the Main Street area, they seem to be doing a good job on picking up a lot of the litter that's around the area there. We just had a grand opening for the Boulevard, the Tampa Housing Authority and the Related Group had there. I saw a few of you there. See Goods there in the slide. And I actually had a good friend, couple friends that actually moved into the brand new apartments, and they're loving their apartment. This one is pretty exciting. We're working with a lot of nonprofits to do what we can't do, and they call it the Hotspot Mobile Outreach Unit. We've gone out there twice now, and we're scheduling a third time. What they do is they go out there and they hit the streets in the Main Street area, and they start to communicate with individuals that are either at Salsinas Parks or in the alleyways, individuals that need help in some way or another, either homeless, have substance abuse issues, mental issues, or other issues. Hopefully they're having an impact. So far they helped a few individuals. One individual get into Grace Point. I think they also helped out a veteran. And they're just connecting some of those individuals with social services. That concludes West Tampa.
Any questions?
Just real quick, regarding Salsinas Park, I'm glad that that program is initiated there. I drove by this morning, and of course, every morning, there's always litter and trash in that area, and we received complaints over the years of people that work and live in the area about the maintenance of the park. I know it gets cleaned up, and it is a struggle and a challenge, but I'm glad to see that you have what you call the hotspot program going out there and talking with folks and whatnot. So I'm glad to see that initiative.
Yeah, it takes a village. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Munoz.
For Drew Park, two of the exciting things we're doing there is we're about to activate the Tampa Bay Linear Park and make it into an active park. So we're working with Parks and Recreation. We may have to hire a consultant, but if we do that, then we'll go through that process as well. Also, we're working with Parks and Rec to identify properties that we can create a new park in Drew Park, a neighborhood park. Then the second thing is that I want to mention is that we're about to revitalize Lois Avenue in Grady. I know a few years back the streetscape improvements were done out there, but it's time to go out there and kind of refresh everything, the landscaping, the palm trees, the median areas. So we're about to start that process. That concludes Drew Park.
Comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Munoz.
Thank you.
Oh, I did have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Dingfelder, you're recognized.
Thank you. In regard to Drew Park, I know last year we were having trouble with quorums and attendance and that sort of thing with your CAC board. How are we doing on that, making improvements?
Still kind of a struggle with quorums. We do have two positions open that Ms. Shalisa Jackson is about to advertise for us, and we're about to start speaking to some of the CAC members and some of the business owners and see if they know anyone that's interested in participating on the CAC, and individuals that actually want to show up. It's
Thanks,
still
sir.
a struggle.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz.
Okay, we'll move to the downtown CRA. And we're very excited. The CRA board and city council have approved this new GMP to go out for this great new expansion of the Tampa Convention Center. Can you bring up the PowerPoint? I'm looking at my computer. I'm assuming you're seeing the same thing. Thank you. So we will have, as you can see in the renderings, 18,000 new square feet. It's going to be over 2 stories, and it will come over the Riverwalk. They have already closed down that portion of the Riverwalk to do the construction there, and those new meeting rooms are expected to open in June of 23. Our Cross Bay Ferry service has started again, and we're getting very excited, and so far turnout has been good. We hosted the International Downtown Association, and it was great. We had a wonderful turnout. We had people stopping into our Ybor CRA office and talking and wanting to know about Ybor, and we were getting a lot of great feedback about our amenities and downtown and our Riverwalk. So it was a really great event to showcase our community, our downtown, and what we have to offer. And lastly, we are expecting for Kid Mason that those construction drawings will be completed in mid-November and then go through the process to go out for bid for construction. we can see, thanks to Tico on the right-hand side, this is especially for Councilman Miranda, that is the same exact picture where you see the streetcar. So you can see what Water Street looks like now as opposed to just a few years ago with all of that development in that same picture. And on the left is the updated renderings of the AER tower over in front of the Straz. And it will be 31 stories. It kept changing, and I think that's going to be the last height of this building as they are in permitting now. I'll take questions at the end, and we'll just get through these four real quick. For Channelside Drive, Phase 1, again, if anyone's been driving by, the landscaping, they're finishing up most of the areas. We're 98% complete for that first section from Kennedy to Washington. We're at 90% completion down from Washington to Whiting, and we have now started Phase 3, which is Whiting to the roundabout. And in the past few weeks, we have broken ground and started construction on the easternmost section of Twigs, that is that first block coming off of Channelside Drive. And on the right, you can also see the Daniel Corp. They are now, actually from the one side, we're getting much more of a building look. It's been coming out very excited. We're trying to time that Twigs project with their construction so that neither one of us is having to rebuild anybody's improvements. And with COVID coming to a more handleable condition, I'm sorry, what did they say, an endemic, we have had our cruise ships now sailing out of Port Tampa Bay, and the port is back open for business. In Tampa Heights Riverfront, we did have Sprouts. They opened. Our employee actually got chased out. They didn't want us taking pictures. They got nervous when we were taking pictures. But we did get a few snaps in before we were kicked out of the building. And we are moving forward with, even when we're, you're in city outfits and we have our city logos on our shirts. And that's the first time any of us have been chased out of anywhere in a while. But at least we get thrown out of the good places. And then our text amendment that we have to add the cultural assets to that Tampa Heights Riverfront is moving forward at December 6th. It will be at the Planning Commission, and once they come forward with their finding that it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, it will come back for final adoption to City Council and those public hearings. And with that, I am happy to take any questions on those four CRAs.
Comments, questions? Very quickly, Ms. Van Loan.
Yes, sir.
With the cruise ships starting back up again down at the terminals and the construction that's finishing up on Channelside, as the cruise ship starts to fill up, will that construction on Channelside Drive be completed soon?
Yes, sir.
That's all
We have to get through that northern end, but by the time they are truly at full capacity, yes. We, right now, that's why they're starting up there, and we'll be down to that one lane in each direction. But by the time they are geared up, yes, that should be, and Mike Callahan will be cursing me if I'm incorrect, but I'm pretty sure they told me that, yes, that should be done, not as, like I said, the gear up time, but by the time they're at full capacity.
I thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm just numbers guy here today. I don't know what for reason, but I'm just looking at Ms. Van Loan just gave a presentation. I know she's handling the downtown vacancy. You have a channel district. You've got a downtown, a Tampa Heights, and a Central Park.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm just going to ask a question, Ms. Vaughn. How does one person, and that spot's vacant right now, and you're the director, and you're doing all this other work, and this work here are 4 CRAs. You one heck of a girl, I tell you.
I love what I do.
I'm just saying. I mean, it's remarkable, but I'm just saying, even to put a person over this vacant spot, that's still too much work for one person to handle. Downtown is moving, Channel District, Tampa Heights. Didn't even know the Sprouts was open, and Central Park. I think that needs to be evaluated. Just food for thought right now, but I think that's a lot for one person. I know we've been doing more with less, but to me, that's a lot. And even for you to doing extra work and taking on 4 CRAs. So I need you to think about that.
It's in the 2023 plan. You guys were gracious enough to give us the 3 positions for 2023. And until we saw the SAP and some of the other issues were settled, we do know we're heading into Central Park will be a lot more demanding. Tampa Heights with the development, and while there isn't a lot of development that we're doing, there is a lot of paperwork that goes with those agreements and arrangements that we do in that community. And now that community, as Tampa Heights is also getting its own money, they are now looking at programs and projects. So that was going to be the next discussion that we had when we got to this summer, yes.
Okay, just make sure sooner rather than later. I don't think we need to wait to 23, but I think you need to really look
Okay.
because there's a lot of work going on that we got to make sure we get out. Thank you.
And if there's nothing else, I'll bring up Courtney for Ybor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Courtney Orr, Ybor Development Manager. The first bullet that I'm going to point out in the direct CRA activities is listed here. It describes how staff worked with the community, the Ybor CRA Economic Growth and Mobility Subcommittee, and the city's parking division to install no parking signs along 3rd Avenue to address public safety concerns in that particular area of the neighborhood. This is a good example of how the Ybor CRA staff work together with the community and various city departments to quickly tackle concerns brought directly to us. A couple of additional direct activities include staff and our CAC hosted with the chair, vice chair, and immediate past chair, a new member orientation. We'll continue to regularly conduct these since members express how helpful they are when starting out as a new member. Staff were fortunate to be able to attend a couple of conferences for learning opportunities, the International Downtown Association and the Florida Redevelopment Association annual conferences. And a special congratulations to Brenda Thrower on the Ybor CRA staff who was elected to the FRA Board of Directors as treasurer during that particular conference. We were very impressed with the artwork received for the inaugural Heart of Ybor Community Art Contest. There were 39 entries submitted. Winners were notified yesterday and will be showcasing the winning pieces in a variety of different ways. We have been experiencing some disruption in the district due to the CSX railroad crossing improvements. However, the short-term disruption is manageable so that we can gain these important upgrades. These photos and bullets capture just some of the continuous upkeep in the district. And we were happy to finally welcome events back into Ybor. We had Halloween-themed events that were, again, a big success, drawing a lot of foot traffic into the district, which the businesses, of course, appreciate. And then lastly, Paddock One, which will offer premium garage condos for car owners, held its groundbreaking with an anticipated ribbon cutting to be held in approximately a year. This concludes the Ybor activities report.
Comments or questions? Ms. Van Loan, I have been with YCDC and the CAC down in Ybor City for years, and the things that have been happening, the great things that have been happening, such as the pumpkin patch, such as the tree lighting. If anybody wants to say that Ybor City is not becoming a neighborhood or not becoming a community again, they are sadly mistaken. Again, Councilman Goods and I were both at the tree lighting last night, and the people that brought their children and walked to that event. Ybor City is a neighborhood and a community again. And it's been the hard work of the CRA, the CAC, and the YCDC. I'd also like to thank Ashley Holmes and the Chamber for last night's event, but Ybor City is a community again. Thank you very much for your hard work.
All right, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. McCray.
Okay, just a monthly update on the SAP. Had meetings with the consultants. GAI will be updating website and information as it relates to the new chair, vice chair, and the subcommittee chairs. We did have a conversation as it relates to the breakdown of the TIF dollars moving forward for the extension of the CRA. And we're also scheduled, actually this Friday, tomorrow, to record a statement from the new CAC chair, Fran Tate. These are just some random pictures as it relates to some of the meetings and subcommittee meetings that we've had this month. Really excited. I will share the subcommittee list here on the next slide. We have some folks that are old, some folks that are new, and but they're really engaged and have hit the ground running, and I'm looking forward to working with them this year. We've already discussed Detective Curtis Williams and his recognition that was received at the annual FRA conference in Fort Myers last month. And I just want to say publicly it has been a pleasure to work with Detective Williams. He and I have definitely hit the ground running. Started out with having weekly meetings, and now it's probably daily. And it's all about what we can do to troubleshoot areas of East Tampa. I actually spoke to a resident of East Tampa yesterday that said she saw a guy in a tree. And I believe Detective Williams was doing something to make sure that he was able to catch some folks that were illegal dumping. So. And last but not least, these are just a list of the upcoming meetings, subcommittee meetings that we will have in East Tampa. There have been some additional changes since this information was submitted a couple of weeks ago, but some of the subcommittees see the need and have added additional dates and times for some of the meetings. But if the public has any questions, they can feel free to give us a call at the East Tampa CRA office, and we will gladly advise them. Any questions?
Any comments or any questions?
I'm glad to see you have the East Tampa tree lighting on that calendar. Gentlemen, that is Monday the 6th. As you know, I made the commitment to get at least 2 trees in East Tampa. We're going to put the second one up on 34th Street in the pond there. It's about a 28, 29-foot tree. I've seen them there constructed already, so hopefully you all can attend. We're going to light that one up this year. So I'm glad that people are already calling, saying they see it and commenting already, because it's bringing a different cheer to the community. So if you all can be there, I'd be greatly appreciated. December 6th. It's Monday evening, 6 o'clock.
1798 East Martin Luther King?
No, that's going to be at the one on 34th Street.
34th Street,
About the
okay.
5300 block of North 34th Street. Should be the
It's in my calendar now.
Robert Carrington Pond. Robert Carrington Pond. No, this is one going to be on 34th. Robert Cole is on ML King. Carrington is on 34th Street.
Any other comments or questions?
It's right across from the Penny Saver property.
Cedric, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Then I thank you very
Thank you.
much for your report. Excuse me, young squires, you're walking out of this room.
Interns.
Can you please come over? Come over to the podium, please. No, there's no uh-oh here. You guys are fine. We have 2 new interns, and I just wanted them to introduce themselves. They have been sitting in the room waiting patiently, listening to our conversations, but I just wanted them to introduce themselves.
Sure. I'm Joseph Mansour. I'm a senior at USF. I'm majoring in cell biology.
Go Bulls.
As always. And I'm interning with Councilman John Dingfelder this semester.
And you, young squire?
My name is Ahmed Mali. I am a 3rd year at USF, and I am majoring in integrated public relations and advertising, and I am interning with Councilman Dingfelder.
Well, I just wanted you to get a proper introduction and hope that you are going to be joining our team. And thank you for sitting there patiently and listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Van Loan.
We have 3 required approvals really quickly. The first one, item number 5, is a facade grant. This is for Dr. Vandal Wright at 2131 West Main. It's a $50,000 facade grant. She's taking that older dilapidated building. She's completely gutting it, creating tenant spaces, and completely redoing the outside. All new windows, all new doors. And she will be coming back probably at the January meeting for her interior grant. So this is for the facade grant for West Tampa.
So moved.
Motion's made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Dingfelder, Maniscalco,
Yes.
Viera, Miranda,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Cedro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent at vote.
The next item is strictly a Scrivener's error. When we brought to you the request to amend the Tampa Heights Riverfront Community Redevelopment Plan, we had indicated it was the 4th amendment, and it is actually the 5th amendment. So this reso just corrects that to the correct version of the amendment.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call, please.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Dingfelder, Viera, Miranda,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Cedro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent at vote.
Our last item is an appointment to the Ybor CRA CAC of a Miss Crystal Blackwell Lastra.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Goods. Roll call vote.
Goods,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Viera, Maniscalco,
Yes.
Dingfelder, and Cedro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent at vote.
Thank you, Board. That is all that staff had.
Thank you very much, Ms. Van Loan, and thank you, everybody that is part of the CRA for your help today with this board meeting. Let's,
Yes, Ms. McCormick, to come up with
Mr. McCray, Ms. Van Loan, Ms. Orr, and all staff that may be downstairs. We've got food up here on the 3rd floor. You're more than welcome to dine with us.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's go for information and reports and new business. Starting with Councilman Vieira.
Just something really fast, if I may. I'd like to see the feasibility of the CRA. The city staff members have been working on having what's called a civil rights trail throughout our city, with a lot of it concentrated within the CRA, and I'd like to see the feasibility, we can do this in March or so of next year, of the CRA being able to partner up on that very worthy endeavor.
Second. Second.
Okay, I have a motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Viera,
Yes.
Cedro,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Dingfelder. Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent at vote.
And nothing else, sir, and I hate to do this, y'all, I gotta run. If I-
Go run.
Turkey? You don't like turkey?
I know, and thank you, Councilman, or Goods, I'm sorry I can't make it. My
You're
apologies.
Fine, brother.
Thank you.
We'll remember this.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Just real quick, Ms. Van Loan, for the CRA, CAC appointment, what was the name again?
Crystal Blackwell Lastra.
Okay, no, just making sure. I know her personally. She's with the J.C. Newman company. Wonderful Ybor advocate, extremely involved. If you don't know her, you should meet her. Great person, and I'm glad that we approved that today. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Carlson.
Mr. Chair, thanks for letting me come down here. Just a real quick item. I recently had lunch with Gary Marmino and Ray Arsenault, two great historians, along with E.J. Salsinas and others, although I didn't meet with E.J. at that particular meeting. But also, you all may know that the Tampa Union Station, Friends of Tampa Union Station are coming before us, I think, in January to talk about the renovation and how we might be able to support it. But in conversations with Gary Marmino, he said that he interviewed World War II veterans, and while he was interviewing them, he said that they remembered vividly stories of coming and going to war through Tampa Union Station. And so parents and wives and spouses said goodbye to their family members at Tampa Union Station for not just World War II, but other wars, and then they welcomed them as well. So this is a picture that Gary pulled from a newspaper article long ago of someone in World War II being greeted by his child. Here's another one from the Tampa Tribune from back then that he pulled, and on the right it shows someone being greeted by his spouse, but on the left the line underneath says their daddy didn't come home, and it's just very moving pictures. And so in talking to Gary, I would like to make a motion that to request that CRA staff speak with the CAC, Friends of Tampa Union Station, City Public Art Program, and Gary Mormino to discuss the possibility of creating a veteran memorial at Tampa Union Station and report back at our February 10 meeting.
Second. We have a motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote.
Maniscalco? Yes. Dingfelder? Viera? Miranda?
Yes.
Boots?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
And Cedro?
Yes.
Motion
Thank you.
carried with Viera and Dingfelder being absent at vote.
Councilman Goose.
Just want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. And, you know, we know some people will go without, but if you can help somebody, help somebody.
Councilman Miranda.
None, sir.
Councilman Carlson, if you will take the gavel, please. I'd like to make a motion to have city staff, and I'm not sure who that person would be, whether it be Ms. Carol Post or Ms. Marley Wilkes, come before the CRA board to discuss their involvement with the Community Land Trust as far as on the city side and how it may work with the CRA in the future, discussing the Community Land Trust that may come before us or not.
Did you pick a date?
Yeah, when would you like them to appear, I guess?
You know, we're going to have so many things, so little time. I would like to this really be discussed and brought maybe back, Miss Van Loan, excuse me, at our January meeting.
You can do January 20th, or I believe February is around the 10th or 11th, so at your pleasure.
I would like to give them enough time, so let's say the February meeting.
February 10th. Okay, motion from Chair Citro, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor, roll call?
Carlson?
Yes.
Boots?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Viera? Maniscalco? Yes. Dingfelder? And Cedro?
Yes.
Motion carried with Viera and Dingfelder being absent at vote.
Thank you very much. There's a
Mr. Chair?
motion. Go ahead.
In regards to your previous motion, I'd like Ms. Van Loan to make sure that the actual CAC board knows about what this board is discussing about the CLTs.
Motion to receive and file by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Have a happy Thanksgiving.